Ever witnessed someone so fast on track you doubt you could ever be on their level? The mission of Advanced Motorsports is to demonstrate the speed is achievable for everyone. With the expertise of some of the best sim drivers in North America, we are set to release free content on social media and comprehensive guides on our website. For those seeking the ultimate experience, our Advanced Motorsport Institute and personalized coaching sessions are the way to go. No matter your level of experience, we invite you to follow us on our social media to learn to be fast.
With the Butt Kicker Gamer 2, what you see and what you hear is what you feel. Butt Kicker. The future is feeling.
It's the dawn of a new season, and what better way to celebrate the sunrise of a new year than to go to a pair of beaches, Daytona Beach and Long Beach to be specific, the first of which plays host to the LMP3-GT4 Challenge in the Precision Racing League. My name is Joey Tebbin. Joining me alongside tonight is Justin Prince, and behind the scenes is our producer, Dustin Allis. It's the Dustin and Justin Show. That's not going to get confusing at all, but Justin, it's the start of 2024 Season 1. LMP3-GT4 Challenge kicks us off on Prototype Monday nights, and I think we're all ready to kick off some action here.
Yeah, tonight should be an interesting one. You have a track known for drafting and speed, and a track known for very tight confines and straight racing and potential contact. In regards to the first of the two races, though, it's going to be an interesting one. Obviously, it's a big test for a lot of what's coming up in terms of the real world in the next couple weeks, but in turn, it's going to be a big trendsetter for the schedule, where you have a lot of flowing circuits past this week.
It is a very funky schedule coming up in the coming weeks. Obviously, Daytona, a place where a lot of drivers have experience with multi-class racing, but then we go to Rudskogen, one of the newer tracks on iRacing. Tight quarters there. Bathurst, the ultimate challenge. And after that, we stay in Australia for Sandown as well. Similarly tight quarters to Rudskogen. And then gets a little bit more familiar. Suzuka, Barber, the Hungaroring, and Okayama. And then the season ends at the Long Beach Street Circuit. Where else could you end a season other than a place that could deal with the highest drama possible? We'll also be going there tonight, but that'll be in the GTP LMP2 series coming up just after racing action here. We don't have any championship standings for you, obviously, because this is the first race of the season. Just note that defending champion Sean Campbell not back this season in LMP3, so there's a power vacuum there. Defending champion G4 Alex Moisan also missing new champions this season. Before we can start around those champions, before we can start anything, we have to thank all the people who make all this possible here at PRL. First and foremost, Advanced Sim Racing. Owned and operated by Sim Racing. Advanced Sim Racing design builds the sturdiest and most durable aluminum profile racing simulation cockpits available in the market today. All PRL members get a 5% discount on ASR products using the Precision5 coupon code. Racebox Sim Racing offers mid and high-end button boxes for sim racing enthusiasts, from the casual gamer up to the most meticulous sim racing driver. Competitively priced and carefully handcrafted, their button boxes are an enjoyable addition to any sim racing setup. Visit RaceSpotTV and also get a 5% discount, also using the Precision5 coupon code. This coverage is brought to you by The Butt Kicker. Butt Kicker products add incredible immersion and realism to every game. Feel every nuance and truly put yourself in the driver's seat with The Butt Kicker. Moradness is a performance lifestyle brand motivated by motorsport and founded by professional race car driver Daniel Morad. For more information, visit moradness.com. Mr. Hedge iRacing Photography. Capture your finest, proudest, or simply worst moments from your hobby in up to 8K resolution. A great addition to any sim room. And last but not least, Advanced Motorsports. Get ready to learn to be fast with Advanced Motorsports. Follow them on their socials to become a better driver. I think I'm going to be needing a little bit of that, Justin. I don't think I am really at Advanced Motorsports level just yet, but I think everybody in the field is right about now, and they're out on track for qualifying. 4 laps, 10 minutes of solo qualifying, the only time all day that they're going to be dealing with no other cars on track.
Yes, indeed, and so far, things are taking an interesting turn compared to what drivers seen in final practice. You have drivers like Greg Seitz not able to top their times from the practice session, some of them as much as 7 to 9 tenths off because of the fact they don't have anyone to draft off of in the midst of this qualifying session. It's about raw pace. It's about raw speed. It's about being able to hit your marks in clean space around Daytona International Speedway when it comes to getting the track position for this season, for this series. And in turn, so far for the Dentist cars, Dylan Lowe looking very solid. Corey Precker is looking like a top 10 contender. We see him on the racetrack. It should be an interesting one to start off the season around this racetrack.
Corey Precker turning into a little bit of an LMP3 expert of his own doing after a couple seasons in this car now. Setting up for his last lap of the session here into turn 1, hard on the brakes, and turning it into a very, very scary turn 1, Justin. You get very close to those tire walls there, then flat out through this little chicane, and then things start to get a little bit finicky with a pair of international horseshoes back onto the oval in about a minute's time, and there's a big lockup into the first of the international horseshoes. That is not going to make Mr. Precker a very happy guy right now.
As a matter of fact, he had an off track in the last lap. That's why he didn't see any improvement there, needing to improve on a 142.8. And the tough thing about when it comes to qualifying with these cars and in general the service, especially when you're basically exploding your right front tire at this rate, is usually by lap 3 is the quickest of the laps based on the trends. And I wouldn't be surprised that the slowest out of the laps, even if this does count, because both those front tires have to be gone by now.
Yeah, Corey is he's certainly getting his money worth with those tires. He says, you know, they're a couple inches thick. I'm going to use every single inch of that. But if you see at the top of your timesheets, up high is Lowe. Dayton Lowe, a new name to the Precision Racing League, really showing everybody up in qualifying, almost half a second over Greg Seitz, one of the winningest drivers in PRL history. He has had so much success in open wheel competition. Corey Precker throws it off the road to the bus stop. That is going to be the end of his qualifying session, and he will start no higher than 7th. Here's a fan favorite coming through the bus stop now in the McLaren. Graham Wildman, race winner in the PRL. He's got the biggest contingent of fans in the YouTube chat every week, and they're hoping to see Graham back to his winning ways this week. He's got a very, very tough contender, Justin, though. The most winning, the winningest driver, dare I say, in GT4 in the PRL, Justin Reams back in this series. Graham's going to have to fight through him.
Yeah, and seeing as though Justin Ream in any car you throw at him, more so when it comes to the GT4s, is usually very hard to touch with the same pole on speed. It's going to be a race where Wildman needs to keep up right from the get-go. Having Comic Sans over your race car is not going to save you, especially when you have a driver with one of the top teams backing him once again this season.
Justin improves his qualifying lap up to P1, or staying in P1 rather, but putting a 10.5 over another new name to the PRL, Cole Hart. But that is the end of qualifying, and we have one new name at the top of the timesheets. We've got another very, very familiar name ready to go racing at the top of the GT4 class. But it's time to take you through the first grid of the LMP3-GT4 Challenge season, and it all starts with a new name. Dayton Lowe of Florida, his home race. He starts alongside Greg Seitz, ahead of a driver who was on the podium a few times last season. Jason Drescher's back for more alongside Daniel Kranifus. Aero Urexoy, a GT3 champion in the past in the PRLs, is continuing his LMP3 education. He starts alongside Tabula Rasa's Vincent LaRue. Down in P7, Michael Kulaga starts alongside Corey Precker. Ian Starker and Joey Morissette are back for more LMP3 on the 5th row. Steven Martinez and Nicholas Collender, 2 experienced drivers in the PRL on row number 6. Michael Fowler starts alongside his teammate Eric Kulaga, another member of the Vulture Motorsports attack on LMP3 this season. Then it is all throttle Thursday all the time, 15th through 17th. Greg Doucette, Matt Dinsmore, and Nicholas Karangis, making it all Nicholas on row number 9 with Nicholas Salaputis as well. 2 more cars in this class, Josh Kimball and Michael Blaze, the latter of which didn't get a qualifying lap in. I believe we will see him in the race, though. In GT4, Justin Ream will start from the pole for the 22nd time in his PRL career. He's racking up big numbers. He starts alongside a new name, Cole Hart. Arcade Smith is back after last season. He starts alongside the fan favorite Graham Wildman. Ted Lowendick takes on GT4 for the 2nd time. He starts alongside not James Carter, but Carter James. P7 went to Sean Romig. He starts alongside Jean-Sebastien Bédard. Adam Ostrich and John Krauser round out the top 10, ahead of Tim McLeish and Advanced Motorsports' own Maxime David. Unlucky 13th went to Brett Punkari and the Princess Daisy Machine. He starts alongside Matthew Zerwick. It's a pair of Mercs with Nathan Jennings and Gary Genzel. Doug Evans starts alongside Michael Doyle on row number 9, but the hits keep on coming. It is a big field in this series. The latter of the 2 Jennings, Will Jennings, starts alongside Robert McGeehan. Kenny Gorman and Dan Gorman start ahead of Niall Drake and David Rothmuller. But there's more. Believe it or not, there is more coming, and it's just our old favorite, our old administrator, Sean Mulholland, 25th and last. That is a lot of cars, Justin. I'm out of breath. I'm out of counting capabilities. I don't know if that was 50 cars or what, but I'm ready to go racing. I'm ready to kick off this season.
And in turn, the main keys when it comes to just 35 minutes of the clock, especially when you factor in the fuel limits here and when you factor in the racetrack as a whole here, you have to be able to keep up with the lead pack. You have to be smart in terms of your moves. You have to be precise on your fuel marks. And better yet, you better have the track position early, because if you're starting the pack here at Daytona, it's going to be very hard to get to the top 10 based on the fact we've seen drivers lose the pack from fighting for half a lap, let alone from trying to get to the top 20 if you're starting this race in about like 30th in your class.
I'm going to put you on the spot here, Justin. Greg Seitz, Dayton Lowe, somebody else. Who wins an LMP3?
Part of me feels Urexoy. I'm very curious on that when it comes to up front.
Justin's booked Ari Urexoy from 5th to 1st, but we'll have to wait and see, because in 35 minutes time, we're going to crown the first winners of the season. The iRacing Porsche pace car peels off onto Daytona Pit Road, and for the first time in 2024, we are racing in the LMP3-GT4 Challenge. It's an excellent start from Dayton Lowe in his first pole, stratifies the field out into turn 1, pulls almost 3 car lengths over Greg Seitz in 2nd, as GT4 takes the green as well. They're 3 wide going into turn 1. Graham Wildman, the meat in a GT4 sandwich. Arcade Smith on the outside. They've solved that because 3-1 doesn't go, but things are getting crazy already, Justin.
Yeah, you need to settle it out by the time it gets the in and out. No major troubles there, it looks like, for most of the field today. And already we're seeing up at the very front. You get a good launch, you're likely going to try and set away in clean space. You compare that to what we're seeing in the GTs right now. Yeah, Cade Smith, that's in a bad spot. He is continuing to get shuffled as they crash in front of him.
That was a huge dive from Corey Precker into the International Horseshoe. Joey Morissette off the road as well. Drama in the middle of the field in LMP3. Up front, though, things are rather clean. Dayton Lowe has pulled a 1-second lead over Greg Seitz. Things get crazy in the middle of the field, though, and in the corner onto the oval, it is a parking lot. Luckily, there's a ton of asphalt out there, and there is a noseless LMP3. I believe that's Ian Starker in big trouble already.
Lots of meatball flags, and here we go again.
Morissette loops it coming onto the oval ahead of the entire GT4 field. Lucky to get down on the apron, lucky to not be collected by anybody, but he's going to have to deal with multi-class traffic a lot earlier than he was hoping for.
And keep in mind, Joey has a meatball flag. That's why that respective car was so loose there off the corner. With all that craziness, though, this has gone nearly perfect for Dayton Lowe here, because they're too busy fighting for second to try and even get to him.
Jason Drescher pulling out of the draft. He's going to take second at the line over Greg Seitz, but he can't calm down here because into turn 1, Seitz is still on the inside. Seitz's teammate Daniel Kranifus watches on as his teammate dives it in. He gets it stopped, slides a little bit though. That's going to allow Drescher to switch it back into the left, into the right. Seitz hangs on. Now Kranifus to the inside of Drescher, into the international horseshoe. Very, very careful quarters here. You can tell both drivers trying their hardest not to lock up, and I think both of them did coming off the corner somehow.
You can tell the Rust Racing machines are making it clear they feel like they're quicker on the short run at very minimum and want to work together. They cannot afford, it feels like, with the way they're driving, at least in their mindset, to be behind Jason Drescher with the way they're handling Drescher's situation. Here's the thing. All that fighting, Joey, they're 2 seconds back in a lap. You know how hard you need to be fighting to lose 2 seconds in the opening lap at Daytona?
It is very, very hard. We do have to remember, though, it's as crazy as it is right now, Justin. You've been on this series for a few seasons as well. You know how crazy things get in the LMP3-GT4 Challenge. When the LMP3s run into the GT4 traffic for the first time, it is absolute calamity. We can calm down for just a moment, but I don't think we're going to be calm for very long, as the GT4 class, they're choosing to heat things up on their very own. It was an excellent start for Carter James. He's actually closed up to the back of Justin Ream, 2 spots up from where he started in the draft of Ream.
Yeah, great charge to the field, up 7+ spots, but keep in mind, this absolute calamity for LMP3 really shook things up. Calander had gotten up to 6th, and then this basically means if you started in the back or even the mid-pack or even the middle of the top 5, you need to basically have a lot of speed to be able to catch up here. That broke a couple different driver suspensions there, hence why so many spins happen in the midst of that chaos out of the in and out.
And it was Joey Morissette once again losing it onto the oval. You see Ian Starker coming up in that grayish-green car, and there's more trouble in LMP3. Michael Fowler in that stealth black LMP3. Well, it's not so stealthy anymore as he throws it onto the concrete in the outside of turn 1. Welcome to the club. It's the first race of the season, Justin, and there's always those race 1 jitters, and we may see more as it's 3 Mercedes into turn 1.
Yeah, and if they keep that up, they're going to lose the grouping. Ted Lowendick, though, having one of his best runs in a while to start off a race. It's been up and down for those banana-powered machines this season, or I should refer to... Well, yes, Joey, yes. Your start of the Xfinity into the Grand National Series was very intriguing, but the more you get, further you get away from the craziness, the better, because Kate Smith has had a horrific start, for comparison's sake, where he's been under attack since the opening lap.
And that was Sean Romig getting by him in that blood red number 71 up into 7th place. Lowendick, Romig, and Doug Evans, and I believe one other driver. They've been sort of teamed up this season. Gary Gainesville, I believe, is the 4th driver. I don't think they're technically racing for a team's championship. I know Evans and Lowendick are, but there's a large group of drivers who are working together, at least keeping each other, keeping the morale up between each other. And as usual, we will get to talk to Ted Lowendick during one of these races, maybe a little bit later today if things start to calm down a little bit. But things are certainly not calm, because the second we look back up front in this class, Carter James is even closer to the back of Justin Ream, within about 2/10 of him. Doesn't seem to want to pass him though, Justin. It's early days in the race. Carter James seems desperate to save a little bit of fuel.
Yeah, so far, Carter James, actually, if anything, has had a couple peaks so far in the in-and-out. He nearly had a side-by-side moment. Still staying with the Canadian. It is the smart play, as you talked about, to save, because you might be able to save that extra gallon or two to be able to save a little bit of time, if necessary, for the pit stop sequence here. But the problem is, you're talking about having to hold off not just an Echelon Simsport car, who's also amongst those in the solid speed grouping. Cole Hart is pretty much making it clear he doesn't want to save. He's too busy trying to battle with Graham.
He's trying to get up there, but the exit, not what he wants. Here comes Wildman, takes a peek to the outside. Not going to work for Wildman. It is McLaren slotting back in line. This is sort of an inter-manufacturer dynamic here. You've got Justin Ream in that Porsche that he loves so much leading the field. Mercedes with James and Hart. The McLaren of Graham Wildman. The Mercedes of Ted Lowendick as well. The McLaren does not seem to be the car that most people have gone for in this field, but Graham says, I'm comfortable in this car, I've won in this car, I'm sticking with it, and it's serving him decently as he continues the fight for the podium.
Yeah, and in turn, has had some good pace in the early going. So far, he's nearly matching the pace, I should say, of the race leader at times right now, but it's still early going.
Got a replay of Corey Precker coming up here. You may have seen him having a little bit of trouble into the bus stop a couple of moments ago. And here it is, loop-de-loop. Doesn't hit anything, though. Excellent save from Corey Precker. Well, not really saving himself time, though.
Yeah, that's a lot of lost time, especially since he had to go to the grass. We've seen how Precker was struggling even to get the car to stop under braking in qualifying. And obviously, it's pretty clear that's carried out over to the race itself. But getting back to Wildman, the construction project manager so far, trying to figure out if he can build his way up into third here with the way things are shaping out.
You had that one ready, Justin. That was good.
Yes, indeed. After all, you have to be able to find some good speed if you want to be able to get around, especially if you're in a Soy Boys racing car.
Exactly. This is the onboard that everybody at home wants to see. He's got everybody watching on as he peeks to the inside of Cole Hart. A bobble from Hart. Wildman looks through. Still side by side, though. Hart almost into the grass as he washes out. He's going to have to make it happen the long way around into the International Horseshoe. And physics and mathematics say no. Wildman is going to slot back in line. He is desperate, though. It may be a little bit of a holding pattern in first and second. Wildman is in no holding pattern whatsoever. The only thing he wants to be holding is third place.
Yeah, that's the major thing, too, is the more Cole Hart tries to defend.
Oh, and there he goes. Cole Hart spins in the second horseshoe. Cade Smith gives him a kiss for good measure. Bedard does as well. That was a driver pushing very, very hard and pushing a little bit over the limits of adhesion.
And I was about to say, the more he tries to push, the more that he holds things back, but also causes more pressure for himself. Simply put it, like the car says, you get too complicated, trouble happens as Dinsmore has lost a nose.
Yeah, that's how crazy the opening 9 minutes of this race has been. We thought we'd seen every incident, but Matt Dinsmore in the shadowy depths of Daytona has managed to lose a nose. And he's coming up right on a battle with a couple of his teammates and Michael Blaze and a few others who are fixing to make things even more crazy. Remember, Blaze didn't get a lap in qualifying. He's been fighting from the back. He's fighting to keep the car on the apex as he's still side by side with one of the Throttle Thursday cars coming into the dogleg.
Would you believe that Dinsmore doesn't have a meatball flag right now? He can technically part of the sim race without a front nose. If anything, he's faster than these two, who are nearly wrecking themselves. Michael Blaze getting very aggressive on these defensive blocks, but more so, everybody is struggling to just even hit the brakes in this car right now.
And he's got Josh Kimball ahead of him, who, right as you say that, Justin, absolutely locks the mess out of that front tire. Blaze is going to be in the draft and flying once they get to the bus stop. Does he fancy himself a chance? Or is he going to be a little bit too far back and maybe fancy a chance at a turn one? I think he's going to have to be discretionary here. The draft, powerful, but not quite so powerful to make a move into the bus stop. Blaze is forced to take it all on his lonesome and hope for a better exit than Kimball, and he's gotten exactly that.
Yeah, nicely done in terms of the braking. Mark Kimball really backed up the corner initially there. But here's the thing, Blaze had to check up to make sure he didn't run over Kimball, and if anything, the 311 is trying to side. What in the world are we doing?
That was almost disaster in turn 4 at Daytona. Michael Blaze and Nicholas Carangas interlocking bits and pieces of carbon fiber and somehow still pointing straight. Carangas is going to get another chance, though. Peeks to the inside to turn 1. Can he get it stopped? He wiggles, he waddles, and he misses the corner entirely. Michael Blaze laughs to himself and takes the position back.
Well, that entire sequence was something. You have a side draft attempt, and now you're behind a driver without a front nose because you entirely missed the corner. This has been just that type of a day so far, to say the very least.
This is what we wanted, Justin. This is what we wanted from the LMP3-GT4 challenge. This is what we come to expect, and we are we're expecting a little bit more in the next 23 minutes. This has been an excellent battle, though, an excellent and clean battle in the middle of the field. Michael Kulaga and Errol Ureksoy, a Vulture Motorsports pair of slices of bread with Vincent LaRue in the middle of this sandwich. It's an interesting dynamic when you're in between two teammates, and Vincent LaRue is feeling some big pressure right now with both of them along the outsides of him.
Yeah, especially since they're reaching traffic right in the next 3 seconds. 1, 2, There's the car because it's in the cones, and here's the good setup to the apron.
How about 4 wide, 3 wide?
Oh!
Wrecked car on the apron. That looked a little bit like Dustin Hollis and Wayne Castile in the Mustang iRacing Top 10 highlights. Absolute craziness. And somehow, everybody still pointed straight, and Vincent LaRue's not stressed whatsoever. He's going to the outside. He's looking to take the top 5 away from Urexoy.
Well, that was just about what I expected, and then some went that corner, especially off the rough corner. You have one rejoining for the grass, and you have basically the run off the apron. Where do you go at that point? At that point, Urexoy just picked up the piece, just said, let's go and try and run away.
But now here he is in deep traffic. That's the McLaren of David Rothmuller, I believe, coming right up. Kenny Gorman in the Porsche right ahead. This is the first time they've had to deal with multiple cars in traffic. There were a couple stragglers who had lost the pack early on. As soon as they get by Kenny Gorman here, they are going to be in deep GT4 traffic, car after car after car. And it's going to be the ultimate test of their traffic management skills.
Yeah. It was a crazy sequence, yeah.
Oh, and that's Cole Hart behind him, Justin, already suffering a little bit of heartbreak after his own mistake earlier, and ends up in the back of the number 44 coming off the bus stop.
Yeah, but that was an extremely wide rejoin in the first place to set up the spin out of the corner. That was his teammate he forced off the racetrack.
And that was Kenny coming through, double Gorman, double trouble. Disaster for that team, and those familiar dark green liveries, both of them having similarly race-ending impacts in the space of about one corner. Here's side by side to turn 1, though. Cade Smith and Adam Ostrich going at it. Smith back up into 7th, bullies the number 96 Porsche out of the way, and he starts to look forward a little bit more as he tries to make up for some of the time he's lost early on. He was up there in the top 6 fighting even for the podium after qualifying. And right now, he's just got to make sure he gets rid of Adam Ostrich.
If anything, though, Cade Smith's going to have a hard time the rest of the way because that left front damage from that sequence up in the horseshoes. Because right now, that's slowing him down in terms of overall aerodynamics. And you can tell Cade Smith's even struggling to get the car to rotate. He just spun it again. Oh, wow.
Oh,
here we
wow,
go again.
Indeed. It's the festival of entertainment into turn 1 yet again. Michael Blaze, Josh Kimball, and all of the Throttle Thursday drivers. I think we need to have a separate feed, Justin, of just these drivers. They've put on enough entertainment for a whole race so far.
At the rate they're locking up the brakes, though, eventually they'll have no tires in theory, right? As here we go again.
Well, if you don't have any tires, if you're locking them up and heating them up, why don't you throw it off into the grass and cool them down? I think that's the strategy here. Greg Seitz in trouble from 3rd, though. From 2nd, rather. Falls down to 4th. Was having a solid day in 2nd. Was losing Dayton Lowe. And now he's losing 2nd and 3rd as well.
And what in the world? First of all, I don't get why Greg Seitz tried to take it high on the traffic. The traffic, I don't think, was expecting that, too. There wasn't the room there, even with that choice there. And in turn, that's absolutely going to destroy Greg's race because he's got significant damage and lost track position. He's going to be down on speed the rest of the way.
Big trouble for Greg Seitz. 8 seconds now behind his teammate Daniel Krenifus. What does he do now? Does he think maybe a pit stop to minimize his losses? I don't know what he's going to be thinking, but here's a replay once again. Seitz in the LMP3 slotting into a gap that maybe didn't actually exist.
It was an unnecessary gap in the first place. Just cut it hard to the left. Yes, it may cost you a touch bit of time, but it obviously the difference right now is you could have held on to your spot. Instead, you lose 8 seconds getting around traffic.
How about try number 2? He was just catching Matthew Zerwick there again, and I think there was a little bit less trouble that time as Seitz found a more ideal place to get by. Into the International Horseshoe, Nicholas Salaputis getting stuck behind one of the BMW entrants, Maxime David, I believe. No, actually, it's Niall Drake. He does get through in a reasonably good shape, a little bit better than Greg Seitz did. Unfortunately, there's still more coming. There is still about half the field of GT4s coming, and he's got 2 hungry drivers behind him in Precker and Doucette.
And at this point, Precker, remember, has been amongst those who have slowed around a few times with how he's been handling the corners. You can just see with how they're just trying to turn. It's to where a lot of the drivers seem to be making the common mistake in normal concepts for road course racing. you don't like to brake while you steer because essentially it drags the front tires. For a lot of these drivers, it's almost like they feel it's the necessity with this type of race car, and in turn, a lot of these drivers are losing so much time because they're burning up so much fresh grip.
This is dicey. GT4s and LMP3s coming through the bus stop simultaneously. Precker, oh, and there is huge smoke. I believe that may have been Josh Kimball looping it out of the bus stop. There were a lot of cars going into one part of the track, Justin, and Joey Morissette comes off the worst.
Yet again, it has not been his racetrack or season debut for the Motion Machine. We've seen the meatball flag earlier, missed the corner this time, and now here we go again. Second place, and Jason Drescher still trying to hold on to the candy car.
And this is into the leaders in GT4 as they reach Ted Lowendick, Graham Wildman, Carter James, and Justin Ream. These are all going to be very difficult cars to pass because they're all racing for their own positions. And Drescher hits Wildman, parks it in front of Lowendick, getting looped around. That is disaster for Ted Lowendick, loses 2 spots. Wildman seems to be okay, but Drescher's not making any GT4 friends.
I am not sure about the choice there because you don't need to set it that deep. You're already in second.
Big, big trouble. I think something's got into the water. Maybe it's the Florida man thing, Justin. Maybe it's just once you end up in Florida, everybody goes a little bit crazy. But we are seeing some first race jitters, some of which have not reached the heights of that one.
He just absolutely missed the braking mark for one. 2, even if that wasn't the case, it's almost like he was trying to diamond it like there wasn't a car there still. And you just can't. No, they just lost second again.
What in the world is going on here? Jason Drescher gets second back. Daniel Kranifus falls back down to third, was right off the bus stop. Maybe when they caught Graham Wildman. We are going to be burning the replay machine down. The tape producers are going wild because here's Nicholas Kranifus all on his own doing the Corey Precker 360 off the bus stop.
They're going to run out of tape at this point. With the way things are shaping up, you better make a run over to the local convenience store for some more duct tape or film tape.
It's GT4 pit stop time. The whole of the GT4 classes come in simultaneously, except for one Ted Lowendick, as he saved more fuel than anybody else. Well, he's certainly hoping so, as Justin Ream, Cade Smith, Wildman, and the entire gang bring it down pit lane. Precker's up into 9th in LMP3 as well, locking up the tires for good measure, because how else do you drive Daytona in an LMP3 car other than totally destroying that left front? Here's the race off pit lane. Easy win off pit lane for Justin Ream, half a second shorter in the box than Carter James. Wildman, a decent stop from him as well, but this is excellent stuff for Ream. Coming off pit exit, he may have broken the draft. He may have a full second lead over Carter James coming out of pit lane.
I think he very much does right now because Justin Ream's just been that consistent all throughout the race. He's amongst those that you can find a way to lead and save gas because while at Daytona, the thought process obviously is you want to stay in the draft, so you're able to save a little bit more fuel, don't have to go necessarily full throttle. A lot of the top drivers, once they break away, are very difficult to catch. We've already seen that with Dayton Lowe already.
How about the Michael Blaze train back on the action as we ride on board inside the car, experiencing the G-forces and the gyroscopic nature of the banking at Daytona. Michael Blaze has been a one-driver entertainment show, and things might be about to get a little bit more entertaining. That's Josh Kimball, who was looking for a dive into the bus stop, nothing doing from that. And Blaze gets to look forward to Eric Kulaga, who's going to peek to the inside of coming into NASCAR 3.
I know it's not a Ford, but Kulaga's still good when it comes to these road courses. And now you have Ted uses the pick. What are we doing?
Well, Josh Kimball, I think, saw that and said, nope, I'm coming down pit lane. Ted Lowendick says exactly the same thing. And as Ted got out of our camera shot there, Justin, that scared me a little bit. I don't know if he made pit speed. That was a very late entry. Maybe that's just me being used to seeing Ted in a stock car, but I don't know if he got it down to pit lane speed.
According to the sim, yes, he did. But some of the drivers started getting some slowdowns at this point because you're talking about pit stop window wide open for the prototypes right now. The thing is, some of these drivers are racing like they aren't even thinking about pit stops. They're thinking about, can I get first, except they're running for 15th and not ignoring the 5 in the leaderboard.
It's looking a little bit like the Daytona infield in the middle of the night. It is just clouded with smoke every single lap. There's a nuclear power plant worth of smoke particles being generated in both of the horseshoes. Back onto the oval again, though. Breathe a little bit of clean air and breathe a little bit of air in the draft, because 1 car, 2 car, 3, 4, 5. It's a 5-car train coming by Doug Evans, all of which are in draft range of each other.
Yeah, the more they fight, the more time they cost themselves at this point. They're lucky that they have the chance to get as high as 10th in this choo-choo train. Michael Fowler not going to appreciate the lap traffic at this point, though, but for the most part right now, you have to be starting to think about getting to the pit lane, because right now the pit window's open. Cranefest has just come in, as well as some of the others are starting to come down for prototype.
Daniel Cranefest kicking it all off. Bright silver and a very, very open pit lane coming into his box. It looks like I'm not seeing any followers, at least in the top 10. Steven Martinez finally ends up coming in, and you go back to P11. There's the takers, Precker, Salaputis, and Michael Blaze. It's about half and half in LMP3, a wide open pit window. It's going to be a battle for 4th and 5th, I think, at the very top. I think the top 3 are fairly sorted. Let's go back to GT4 for a moment. Jean-Sébastien Bédard having the best race of his PRL career so far. And unfortunately, just like so many, it's all come undone at the bus stop, and it's all come undone with a nose into the safer barrier.
Quite simply, again, just too quick. You missed the mark in turn as well in part of the curbing. And we've seen how with pogo sticks drivers, whether it's the Ligier or whether it's especially the GTs. And then don't rejoin the way I think you're rejoining, because that is a bad K-turn for 1. 2, thankfully, no one else is coming.
Man, just take the rear bumper off while you're at it. You know, it's already gone bad enough. Might as well destroy the rest of the car and get a little bit of extra insurance money. The battle for second is back on. It may be a battle for pit entrance as Dayton Lowe from the lead brings it down pit lane. Are Drescher and Seitz both about to bring it in simultaneously? And if so, who's going to be later on the brakes? Drescher pulls it down. He's going to come in. Seitz is in as well. And Drescher's going to win the race on the brakes. But is he going to win the race off pit lane?
That's my big question. Keep in mind, already one driver black flag for that Michael Blaze. He had done so on pit exit. But with the way these two have been racing each other, I wouldn't be surprised if we see the potential of a speeding penalty on the exit with how closely knit they've been and how much, especially, some of these drivers have not wanted to give up some of this time.
It's 11.7 seconds for Lowe. What's it going to be? Drescher 12, Seitz 12 as well. No changes, but nothing separates second and third. This is going to be a race on track in the final 10 minutes for second place. We don't even have to think about Dayton Lowe. He's almost 10 seconds up in the lead now. He's 20 seconds up in the lead now. He has solidified this win, and unless there's any trouble in GT4 traffic, he is going to be your race winner in LMP3. But everything is still to fight for second, and Daniel Cranefest might not even be out of it. Look at this. After a spin, he's only about a second behind the second and third runners.
You can say the same for Greg Seitz, since he was 8 seconds behind his teammate, remember you quoted a few minutes ago. That's what happens when the battle for second sees multiple spins and you end up having a wrestling match like just about the same vein as this one.
A wrestling match in a smoke-filled room. Kulaga and Urexoy and everybody else. Fowler is somehow in this fray now after a very, very early mistake. He's joined the back of this train. The number 77 of Greg Doucette in the center of it all. Michael Fowler, Justin, I need to bring it back to that. Remember, he was one of the first cars to spin. I think it was lap 1, turn 1. Fowler spun it off into the runoff. And he might be about to fight for a top 10 here. He got his mistakes out of the way early, and he's ready to make up for them.
Gonna need a lot of leapfrog to be able to do that in just 9 minutes, though. And keep in mind, the reason Urexoy's back here, remember, he was running 4th before the pit stops. He ended up having to take an extra 10 seconds in his pit stop sequence. So you're talking about a very fast car wanting to make some passes back.
Side by side into the bus stop, Doucette and Urexoy. Fowler gets a little bit of target fixation and misses the corner. It is always terrifying to go side by side through the bus stop, Justin, and I think 3 drivers somehow got scared in a 2-car battle.
I mean, do you blame them with how the bus stop's been and how tightly? Yes, indeed. Here's that big run, though. Kalaga looking to get the zoom back on.
Eric Kulaga looking at his brother in 6th place and saying, I'd at least like to join him in the top 10. He's going to have to do it the hard way around the outside to turn 1, and that is not going to happen. But Sonidakis absolutely smokes the front tire. Still makes the corner, though, and holds Kulaga behind.
Right now, keep in mind, the 17 slowly but surely dropped, if anything, into the midst of this battle. So that's been the difficult part for drivers like Nico's, where you look at how they've gained spots. Remember, this was a car that did not put up a qualifying time. You're talking about dead last in the class. And they've been able to just avoid all the carnage. At this point, it's just a matter of letting everyone not only burn up their tires, but also fight like crazy like we're seeing behind them.
Speaking of fighting like crazy, 2nd and 3rd have absolutely heated up. Drescher and Seitz not going to be side by side through the bus stop, but they will definitely be side by side going down the start-finish straight, and even running 1 by 1 through the bus stop. They've slowed each other down, and they've brought Daniel Kranifas in with about 7/10 of the 2 of them. This is a 3-car battle for 2nd now, and it's going to become even more so as Seitz pulls to the outside, pulls back to the inside to steal the draft of Drescher once more, and they're going to be side by side to turn 1 if Seitz has his way.
That's the thing, though. The second Greg Seitz right now steps out, it's like it turns off all the momentum and speed he picks up because there's no draft in front of them. They're just that equal right now. It's all up to Drescher how he approaches the track, and Greg Seitz, he continues to try different things with Drescher playing such aggressive defense.
He has Drescher in his sights right now. He just can't seem to slice him up at all. Graham Wildman, GT4 coming up, but nothing is going to be changing there. I do have to mention Graham Wildman, by the way, up into 2nd place in GT4. Everybody in GT4 has totally lost contact with Justin Ream. Carter James has fallen to 3rd. Sean Romig is up to 4th. As we've looked away for just a moment, Justin, everything has changed in GT4. And Graham Wildman's going to be a very, very happy guy up into 2nd.
I don't think that battle's going to be over yet. I don't think this battle on screen's still not over. It's all down to how these drivers want to approach this with under 6 minutes to go. Here, come. And hearing that one of the Kalagas just had a big incident. Michael Kalaga just had the problem with the 82 car.
Well, we may be about to have another incident at the bottom of your screen. There was a little bit of an intersection with the Gorman Porsche. And that was Michael Kulaga being looped out of the top 6. There was no trouble, as you saw at the bottom of your screen through the bus stop. No changes just yet, but I think that's exactly what Greg Seitz wanted. Gets the time to make up the run, sucks up to the back of Jason Drescher, and pulls up to the top of the banking. His teammate Daniel Kranifas is right behind, though, and there's only 5 minutes left. Is this the time when team orders go out the window? Is Kranifas about to send it on his teammate?
If anything, I'd be, if I'm Kranifas, try and send Greg Seitz to be able to try and get the run for 2nd and then try and make the run for 3rd yourself. The problem is, it's not so easy to be able to try and say tandem draft like it's a stock car here, especially at Daytona when it comes to these dentist machines. You don't want to have a root canal on your front bumper from trying to lock bumpers.
You do not want to be like 100 Gex. I got my tooth removed. You want to have all the teeth left in your LMP3 mouth at the end of the race, but this is a point where we get to calm down, I think, for just a moment in LMP3, because until we get back on the oval, nothing has been historically changing. Look who's on the oval at the bottom of your screen, though. The battle for 2nd in GT4, Graham Wildman, Carter James, and Sean Romig, all together and all preparing to do battle into turn 1 with a double draft in GT4.
And that's going to become a bit of a wrestling match because they keep swapping every time in the midst of the infield, it seems, right now between James and Wildman. Wildman seems to be able to get some better positioning by the time he gets to the front straight away. But they're not afraid to even go below the yellow line because Carter James has taken runs underneath that yellow line all throughout.
This is not NASCAR. No yellow line rule enabled. You can do whatever you want down there. It's a lawless land, and Carter James around the outside once again discovers that a corner with an equal amount of banking, totally flat, the outside is very, very difficult to hang on to. Wildman hangs on to 2nd, and you look back to the bottom of the screen again. I hope you've had your eyes checked because you're going to need to be using them a lot here. You're going to be stretching those eye muscles because once again, Seitz and Kranifas fighting themselves now for 2nd as Drescher gets to breathe just a little bit into turn 1 this time.
Yeah, that's because in part with the lap traffic that caused him a lot of time, and there's the near root canal attempt. The 55 just about sheared the rear bumper of Greg Seitz off.
I don't know where we're going to be able to look here. We're going to have the double feature here. We're going to have the double monitor until the end of this race, because these fights for second have been absolutely enormous. Spare a thought for Dayton Lowe and Justin Ream. They're going to come away with dominant wins unless something goes horrifically wrong in the next 3 minutes, but all the action is in these two fights for second. Seitz is as close as he's ever been to Drescher, and if he can nail the exit back onto the oval, are we going to see him finally get the elbows out and go for a move into the bus stop, as Carter James is thinking about doing on Wildman at the bottom of the screen?
I don't know if it's necessarily the smartest move with all this traffic to make the pass into the bus stop, maybe out of the bus stop when it comes to the LMPs and the way things are shaping out here. Because I think Seitz, when he stays tucked up behind Foley, does have good positioning. But this traffic's about to get extremely hectic yet again. You wait for the right timing, you can force Drescher to get out of the gas on the checkup. Just like the one behind him.
Yep, Daniel Kranifus has been absolutely punked by Brett Punkari. Nothing Brett did wrong, just got stuck up behind GT4 traffic, eventually gets through Punkari, eventually gets through Nathan Jennings, but basically Daniel Kranifus can be booked out of the battle for third now, unless something goes wrong into turn one, which it very well could in the near future. Seitz just doesn't seem to have the straight line speed for the moment. Drescher's going to hang on 2 seconds into turn one, but Seitz has been so strong through the middle of the infield. You know that battle's not done yet. Back in GT4, Wildman still holding on. He has been a historically defensive driver in the PRL. If you remember back to last season, if you were with us in this series, him and Alexis Moisan, they were putting on battles like nobody else. They were banging doors. Wildman was making that McLaren extremely wide at all times. And he's doing the same thing again with some new opponents with Carter James. He is not afraid to defend still.
And Carter James has a lot of speed when it comes to in the draft right now when it comes to his Mercedes AMG. He's got a decent amount of pull. Roman, if anything's the one in the popcorn seat. If anything boils over, he picks up scraps. Right now, I think it's all down to the top two in terms of who gets second step on the podium with how much draft pull Carter James is getting and how much deeper he's sending it in on the brakes nearly to the back bumper.
Bottom of your screen, Greg Seitz to the inside of Jason Drescher. Got to the inside, coming back onto the oval. Is he going to still be alongside coming into the bus stop? This is an open setup series, so levels of downforce differ even between two similar cars, and Seitz just doesn't seem to have the straight line speed to keep up with Drescher on the oval, and that is his demise once more into the bus stop. He's only behind by about 2/10. He can use the full effect of the draft, but he doesn't seem to have anything out of the draft.
Yeah, it's dead even on speed. I've seen it already a couple times on comparison's sake. It seems as though the second he's out of the draft, he loses all chances. But with the final second, here we go again.
Carter James sent it, the end of all sends, into turn one, and it did not work out for him. Wildman takes it back, and Sean Romig takes third for good measure. James had to try something, didn't work out for him though. Drescher and Seitz were side by side coming through the exit of turn one though. Seitz was ahead for an absolute millimoment, and he's still gonna hang back. But it is the final lap finally. Dayton Lowe, 25 seconds up the road, is basically turning a victory lap as these two are gonna battle one final time once they come onto the oval. And Seitz knows these are his last chances.
And there's a strong chance that battle for second in the GT4s is about to factor in the battle for second in the Ligiers, because the second they start to converge, there's a chance that allows the opportunity for Seitz to get the run. That's the only other time so far in the midst of this he's gotten side by side for the past 5 minutes. It's when they reach the lap car that forced the second place machine on the brakes.
It's almost like it was scripted how all of this is going to end up happening in exactly the same place at nearly exactly the same moment. Up front, Dayton Lowe is going to come home with a 27-second lead to win his first race in the PRL. We'll give him all the glory when he deserves it. But Seitz pulls to the outside to the bus stop. Is he finally going to be able to make the move on Drescher? He is not. His exit is scuppered, his straight line speed is non-existent, and Jason Drescher is likely going to hang on for second. But all of this drama, all of this focus is for nothing because Dayton Lowe in the number 11 showed up the entire LMP3 field, came into the PRL in his first race, and absolutely stunts on everybody. Lowe wins for the first time, and that is only the first of 4 winners tonight, because we've got one more winner to crown. He's doing his own victory donuts. Justin Ream, back in GT4 after a season off in the PRL. He wins for the 17th time in absolutely dominant fashion. He had the field in his clutches, and he ran away from them after the pit stop cycle. It's going to be a photo finish to the line for P9, Nathan Jennings and Brett Pancari. Jennings is going to hang on. Pancari comes home in P10. And how about a photo finish for 9th and 10th as well? Salaputis loses out of the line and finishes 10th right behind Nikos Sanadakis.
Well, that was exciting to say the very least. At this point, absolute intense fighting throughout this field tonight, especially in the battle for 15th, the prototype. Some of these drivers, though, very quietly having some spectacular races. When you look at some of the climbs, you're talking about up to 10, 15 spots in both these classes with how they've been able to dodge everything that happened in front tonight.
The number 52 of Robert McGeehan brings it across the line. That's going to be very confusing this season. You've got the orange McLaren number 52 of McGeehan, and you've got the orange McLaren number 53 of Graham Wildman. I think I did mix those up once today. I think I would be doing that a lot more this season. Doug Evans brings it across the line. Gary Gainesville brings it across the line. And Kenny Gorman, the last of your finishers. But what absolute drama today. And we've got another race coming up. We've got GTP and LMP2 action from Long Beach coming up. If this wasn't crazy enough, we're going to double up the craziness. We are going to be silly geese to the max. And I don't know if my larynx is going to survive. But for now, let's take a look at the calmest man in the Precision Racing League, because Dayton Lowe came home with victory over Jason Drescher and Greg Seitz, who put on an absolute barnstormer for 2nd and 3rd. 2nd is still, I believe, Jason Drescher's best result in the PRL. Daniel Kranifus comes home in 4th, and Vincent LaRue had a quiet day of his own doing as well and finishes in the top 5 in his PRL debut. Martinez, Precker, Urexoy, Sanadakis, and Salaputis round out the top 10. And right below them, Eric Kulaga in his LMP3 debut, just missing out in the top 10 for Vulture Motorsports. Greg Doucette and Eric's brother Michael, and down to P13. Josh Kimball, Michael Fowler, Nicholas Sanadakis, or Nicholas Karangis rather, and Matt Dinsmore round out the lead lap finishers. Ian Starker and Michael Blaze both ran into assorted amounts of trouble, ended up 1 lap down. Joey Morissette ended up in quite a bit of trouble. The only member of the used car lot is Nicholas Collender. I don't believe. No, he did get off the line. Only made it about 4 laps, though. Unfortunate for him. Down in GT4, Justin Ream, back in GT4, back on top. No surprise whatsoever. The Canadian wins again in GT4. Graham Wildman comes home in 2nd ahead of Sean Romig. Excellent race from him to drive up to 3rd. Carter James was fighting for the win. He's going to be disappointed with 4th, I think, ahead of Cade Smith. Then it was Adam Ostrich and Tim McLeish down to 2nd. Ted Lowendick was in the fight for the win before a bad instance after the pit cycle, I believe. He ends up 8th ahead of Nathan Jennings and Brett Pancari, who had that beautiful photo finish to the line. David, Serwick, Doyle, Drake, McGeehan, Evans, Gainesville, and Gorman down to the end of the lead lap finishers. David Rothmuller and Will Jennings both ended up 1 lap down. Cole Hart was also in the fight for the podium, ended up getting looped around. He finishes 21st. Krauser was 3 laps down with him as well. And then we get into the used car lot of cars with heavy damage. Baydard and Gorman, Dan Gorman to be specific, and Sean Mulholland, series admin. No laps turned because he was too busy doing admin duties, too busy putting the sessions on. But that is enough bookkeeping for one day, because I cannot tell you how excited I am. For the first time I'm talking to Dayton Lowe is as a race winner. Dayton, your first win in the PRL at the first time of asking. How'd you do it?
Honestly, it feels like luck. I've been struggling for pace all week at Daytona, and then it finally clicked right before qualifying.
Well, I think the main reason you won is because you share 6 letters of your name with the track. That's got to be some good luck.
It's got to be like at least worth 5 extra tenths, maybe. I don't know.
So we've got 8 more races to go this season. It's your first season in the PRL. What are expectations going forward? Is a championship at the top of your mind?
Championship is definitely at the top of my mind. I'm trying to put as much concentration into LMP3 as possible so I can get this championship. It ain't going to be easy.
Well, Dayton, congrats on the first one. Maybe the first of many, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Dayton Lowe coming home with his first win in the PRL. How about a guy who has certainly not won for the first time in the PRL? Justin Ream, after his 17th win in GT4, is with Justin Prince.
Yes, indeed, and welcome back, Justin. First things first, talk us through your perspective how this broke down tonight, where you dictated the pace and then ran away with it after the pit stop.
I was just playing a fuel game at the start, I guess. It was kind of the strat to do at the beginning, and then the last couple laps before pitting, I went a full push, and then decided to pit one lap earlier just because of the LMP3 traffic coming up. And then, yeah, it was just full push from there to the end.
So in turn, with the organization standpoint here, what's that focus like for you as your entire group is with Daytona to start things off with you showing the proof of concept with a car that can run away?
I'm just looking to have some fun, basically. Just take it one race at a time.
So in turn, the next race at a time, your thoughts heading into the second race of the season already with the points lead, but in turn as well, already looking to get things squared away for Norway.
Yeah, RaceSpotTV should be pretty fun, I think. Should be a good race.
Thank you very much for your time, Justin.
No problem, thank you.
That's Justin Ream. He wants to go places.
He does want to go places. From Justin and Justin to Joey and Jason. We've got Jason Drescher back in the booth after second place today. You had probably the most exciting battle of anybody today, Jason. You and Greg Seitz were going at it for the entirety of this race.
That was so intense. Made a mistake with traffic and spun, so I didn't expect to be in the position I was in, but I was carrying damage, so... But defensive every lap, but that was great.
And it sort of distracted us from the overall winner of the race because you guys were absolutely going at it for second. But how does it make you feel for the rest of the season to see Dayton Lowe coming in, winning by 26 seconds? How are you going to beat him for the rest of the season?
Yeah, it's a little tough. With Daytona, it's tricky because you can have the low downforce versus the high downforce. And I was running low, so I think that had a little bit to do with it. But he seems really quick, so it'll be a tough season.
Well, Jason, welcome back. Welcome back to the podium, and we'll see you next week at RaceSpotTV.
Thank you so much. Look forward to it.
Jason Drescher coming home with yet another podium to add to his trophy cabinet, and another guy who's got a bunch of trophies in his cabinet already. How about adding an interview with Justin Prince to that trophy cabinet?
Yes, indeed. A fan favorite, to say the very least. Graham, first things first, talk us through the battle for second, because lots of big sends, but in the end, you prevail.
Oh man, that was definitely one of the stressful ones I've had here in the PRL. Had a slow down there in the second stint that backed me up a little bit, and then with Carter's spin there, it kind of made us a 3-wide battle for second place. I just tried to play to the car's strengths. I was really strong in the infield, so try to just hold on to the lead into turn 1 and hold it through the infield and hopefully have enough of a gap. I kind of roped him into the lunging up the inside there on the last lap. That's a classic Daytona maneuver. So, yeah, I'm happy with how it turned out, and I'm excited for the season.
So, in turn, you're one of those who bring a lot of fan attention for what I've seen. It's almost about 15, 20 people deep, it seems your fan club is. So, how would you describe that fan interest for you and your group this season?
Oh, I just am so thankful for all my friends coming out and watching with me. They're really supportive of this league, and they enjoy watching the races. They enjoy the show you guys put on for it. So I'm really thankful for all of them coming out and watching it and enjoying the entertainment.
So I'll ask your opinion on the next racetrack. How do you feel about Norway?
Oh, well, you know, I've never really raced on this track before, so it's going to be a bit of a learning curve getting up to speed. From what I've seen, it's kind of tight, kind of twisty, so we'll see how it goes with multi-class racing, but it's definitely going to be a learning adventure.
Well, congratulations on the podium finish to start. Your entire fan club is enjoyed.
Well, I'm glad that they're happy, because that makes me happy. See you guys next time.
That's Graham Wildman coming away second in the GTs.
And unfortunately, we do have to wave goodbye to Daytona. We're going to be waving hello, or hello is probably what they say in Norway, because next week we're going to Rudskogen. We are going up north, one of the newer tracks, but now over a year old on iRacing. Drivers should have experience here. They definitely don't have experience with LMP3-GT4 multi-class racing, and that's going to be lots of fun. Same time, same place here on RaceSpotTV. We hope to see you there, but don't leave, because we've got even more action. If you thought what you just saw was crazy, well, how about we turn things up a little bit more? GTP LMP2 at the Long Beach Street Circuit, in between the concrete walls, in the tight quarters, Long Beach, California. It's time for the opening round of the GTP LMP2 series, Justin. And I don't know what I'm going to say about this, because we are either going to have a track blocker on lap 1, or we're going to have the best race we've ever seen, or we're going to have both. Anything can happen.
How about a track blocker on lap 3? After all, you're talking about the chance for drivers to land on the fountain. You're talking about the chance for big-time track blockers if anyone goes a little bit too deep on the opening lap or opening laps on the send. And you're talking about a racetrack where you're going to be seeing speeds with lap times under 1 minute and 10 seconds when it comes to these machines today. These prototypes, whether it's the old school LMP2s or it's a new kid on the block, but the GTPs are about to have a little bit of fun, to say the very least, to see how much speed they can go around this track.
We kick it off at Long Beach, and then we kick off a little bit of an American season for the first 3 rounds. Some of the finest tracks we have to offer. Watkins Glen coming up next, and then obviously synced up with the 24 hours of Daytona in the real world. We will go to Daytona in this series as well, and then immediately after that, we'll ship everything over to Germany to go to the combined layout of the Nürburgring. I hope everybody's going to be studying. I hope everybody will be practicing, and that will be high drama. There have been times in the past, though, where the Nürburgring has been removed from the schedule because it's too long for some drivers. We'll see if that happens this season. We may go there for real, though. Sebring coming up after that. Spa, Aragon, Montreal, and Silverstone. A little bit of an F1 style, European-ish tour with one Canadian track to end the season. It is going to be absolutely phenomenal. With these top-level prototypes, Justin, every time we see one of these calendars, it's basically like you asked somebody to generate the finest tracks in the world for high-level prototype racing, and it seems like every season we get that.
Yeah, especially I'm curious about Daytona and Spa with how these drivers play out. You're talking about the chance, though, that we don't see as much traffic overlap, because the fall-off difference is honestly on the exact same when it comes to the top of the board to the bottom of the board. You still have some of the drivers in LMP2 in their top times that could set faster times than the worst of those in GTP. But keep in mind, while the driving styles are similar, and when the cars in turn you're talking about are similar, you're talking about the use of, say, the hyper technology for GTP. That's going to be a bit of a factor with the energy store compared to the LMP2, where it's a little bit more touch and go in terms of how you drive the circuit.
Let's have a little bit of an onboard journey here. This is Matthew Falk, one of the new drivers this season in the LMP2 category, experiencing the third sector at Long Beach, taking it through the hairpin and ending up back on the front straight, the curved front straight, which will potentially pose difficult in multi-class traffic. Falk's on the clock, though. A few minutes left in qualifying, and this is hopefully going to be his fast lap as we ride on board.
Yeah, with 4 laps to be able to set the qualifying lap, needed to pick up a lot more than the 1 minute 15 seconds, because that's the bottom of the board of the entire field outside of Michael Diaz. For the most part, some drivers like to take it careful, try and save the tires, or better yet, try and make sure they can serve for a push lap on lap 2 based on the trends we've seen on the sim.
Staying with Matthew Falk, rather. Michael Falk, I don't remember who that is. That may be a Jeopardy champion, but the concrete canyons of Long Beach for years, since the 70s or 80s, at the beginning of this of the street circuit's history, it has been a place that I think everybody has feared. And Matthew Falk is getting a trial by fire in his first race in the PRL. We can say that much. Pat Pelshaw up at the top of the standings in GTP. Daniel Harris, I don't think, has set a quantitative lap, so expect to see him up there in his next lap. Chinsky on pole in LMP2. Falk rounds the hairpin. Let's see where he ends up compared to Chinsky. Can he fight for pole? Can he fight for the top 10? Bringing it to the line. It's going to be a 1:14.982 for Matthew Falk. Still about 3 seconds off pole. He's got more time to find in the next 5 minutes.
A lot more time, to say the very least, as we take a look at some of the others around circuit. Mark Kalin amongst those who was towards the bottom when it came to the GTP final practice times. Needs to pick up a lot more when it comes to this one-back machine. Usually one of the oval specialists coming off one of his better runs at Kentucky just in the past week, Joey.
Remember what I said about Daniel Harris not doing a real lap yet? There was his real lap, up onto pole with an identical lap time to Pat Pelshaw. It went to the 10,000th though, and Daniel Harris gets P1. Mark Kalin coming through the final sector. He looks like he's setting up for another lap. This is not going to be a real lap for Mark Kalin. He's getting maximum speed onto the front straight, and Bubbles the wall sponge is going to hope to stay out of the walls for the next 60 seconds. 70 seconds, I should say.
Yeah, Bubbles had a lot of rubs it to the wall, if I remember correctly, to start off on Wednesday. Although, when he isn't rubbing against the wall with his race car, he does have speed. Thing is, I'm surprised he hasn't rubbed the wall yet, because he seems to be overcooking some of these exits to the point where he's nearly knocking the wall down at least 4 times now, and he just knocked over the rumble strips.
Ooh, it's getting very, very dicey here. You'll also notice that it is not the same prototype split as we saw last season. Last season, it was the Cadillac Festival in the GTP category. But now you've got Daniel Harris in the Porsche. You've got Pat Pelshaw in the Acura. You've got Eric Palacio in the Acura. It's almost an even split between Porsche and Acura and GTP, and not a single Cadillac to be seen other than Anthony Dring, currently down in 21st.
I mean, what do you think when it comes to that? It's like giving people more choices ends up having people try different things. But in all seriousness, you're talking about the Acura that's very successful in real life. The Porsche has its own advantages depending on the racetrack as well. You're still going to have a big preference, I think, to the Porsche in turn. We're already seeing with the top drivers today in class. The Cadillac, I think a lot of people love because of the raw speed. Here's the thing, most of those top teams did not go that direction, it looks like, to start off the season.
Adam McDonald back in the PRL. He's had a couple of seasons off, but it's good to see Adam back. Previously a Formula C competitor. Good to see him back in the prototypes. Dave Menino, formerly a Formula C competitor in his own right. Formerly a GT driver, but last season made his GTP debut in the first season of GTP in the PRL, and he was very, very fast. Had a couple of poles, had some very good races, was never quite able to seal the deal with a win. Maybe this is the season where it finally happens. I don't think pole's going to happen as he Max Chiltoned it through turn 4 there. He might get one more lap on the clock, though. Also, down in LMP2, Jack Hedgecock's defending champion. He's back for more, and he's put it on pole in LMP2. That's the way to start the season for Hedgecock's.
Yeah, and Hedgecock's also leading the way in practice, was quicker than 2 GTPs. He may be very difficult to beat, to say the very least. I'm still amazed, though, at what we're seeing at the top of GTP. The exact same time, by the way, between the 22 and the 919. Can anyone make it a 3-way tie? That's my big question.
Let's see, is it going to be Dave Menino? The answer is Menino. It's not going to happen. He did not improve, and he is going back to pit lanes. He knows he doesn't have enough time to do one more lap. Boris Ovando, very, very fast in a GT car, very, very fast in a prototype, but we only saw him 2 times last season. He only made a few one-off starts and wasn't really able to form a championship challenge outside of a few solid runs. Out of the final corner, though, we know how fast Boris is. Is he going to be able to fight Daniel Harris for pole? It's a short run from the hairpin to the line. He's got to improve on a 113, and he is absolutely going to improve a 110.3 for Ovando. It's a standing O that would put him up into 5th, but I think it's going to put him down into 9th, actually. Took a little while for that to load. I was worried he got an off track. Boris is going to start in the top 10, though.
Still a solid lap, it looks like. Based on the color you see on the pylon, it looks like for the 11 of Igor that he looks to be on track to at least improve before the session ends. Looks like just about everybody's able to set a qualifying time except for Adam McDonald, as well as the 48 machine did not set some laps in for 10 Ishian. But track position is critical, and a lot of the top drivers in the GTPs struggling to get high times. As a matter of fact, the 11 behind 3 of the top drivers in LMP2 on time.
Was improvement in the final lap, though not going to be improvement for Adam McDonald. His final lap is going to end cattywampus before the hairpin, and he is going to be starting from the back of the GTP field. Grigor Georgiev, by the way, who you saw, this is a home race for him. Originally from Bulgaria, but he's since resettled in Los Angeles, just down the road from Long Beach. It's going to be a home race for Grigor as he looks forward from 19th on the grid. That's going to be it for qualifying, and you may be slightly concerned that we're just replaying a race from last season, because Daniel Harris is on pole in GTP, and Jack Hedgecock is on pole in LMP2. The more things change, the more they stay the same, and now Daniel Harris gets to start from pole for another time in the Precision Racing League. It has been so many times for him. It's been 7 times in the past. Now number 8, he starts alongside his arch rival, Pat Pelshaw. Then it's Ryan Skolny and Chris Walsh, 2 new names to the series on the second row. Michael Diaz is back. He starts 5th alongside Mark McDonald for Rust Racing. Zach Hebert starts 7th alongside a very, very colorful Ryan O'Connor. I'm a big fan of that. His Precision Racing Esports teammates Boris Ovando and Nathan Bartley make up row number 5. It's Darian Roy and Eric Palacio on row number 6. Dave Menino is back. He starts alongside his teammate J.R. Williams. Nathan Ray starts alongside Aiden Young. And Will Borland starts alongside the most mulleted man in the land. It's Mr. Bradley Holly. 19th, Jeff Evans starts alongside new name Calvin Myant. Grigor Georgiev at his home race is alongside another one-back driver, Nicholas Schwartz. Mark Kalin and Anthony Dring make up row number 12. The only Cadillac in the field belongs to Dring. And Adam McDonald, not able to get a qualifying lap in. Maybe starting 25th will be a good thing. He'll stay out of the drama on lap 1. In LMP2, defending champion Jack Hedgecock's back on pole. He starts alongside a guy who beat him to a couple of races last season, Joshua Chinsky. Blake Zeddy's back alongside his teammate Caleb Lehman. Daniel Zegger's back in the PRL for Team Talent after many, many seasons, starting alongside Jeremy Carter, who came so close to getting his first win at Le Mans last season. Luke Wallace and Eugene Maltsev on row number 4, and then it's all go-in on row number 5, Josh and Nicholas, starting ahead of Dakota Tabler and Matt Carroll, rounding out the top dozen. Unlucky 13th went to Andrew Wood. Big name back in the PRL as well, alongside Michael Belair, Nick Silver, John Leedy, Chase Kaufman, and Don Hunter bring us down to the end of the top 18. Ryan Chandler separated from his brother Reagan yet again, but back for another season in LMP2 starts alongside Nathan Mon. Then it's Karsten Quint, onboard Matthew Falk, and Edward Vardanesian to the end of the field in LMP2. 25 GTP entrants, 23 LMP2s, 48 prototypes on the street of Long Beach, Justin. That's simple math to lead to chaos.
And in turn, I think this is going to be a crazy start, to say the very least. Already several drivers coming out of the pit lane in final practice, locked it up and nearly wrecked into the opening corners here. I think if you're amongst the top 2, the main concern is get a good jump. If you're in the heart of the pack, get ready. Have your bubble wrap ready. I hope you have your cars already wrapped in it.
Well, single file through the final sector and through the hairpin to make sure everybody survives. That is what we're going to do in both classes. It's an excellent feature I think the PRL has added. But Daniel Harris on pole for the 8th time takes us to green, and we are racing on the streets of Long Beach for the first time this season. Harris leads a stratified field to turn 1. That's going to prevent any drama, I think, on lap 1. But the LMP2s are preparing to start as well. Hedgecock's rounds the final corner. The green flag is out, so we're at racing conditions already, and everybody files through the first couple tight corners, files into the fountain, and hopes for no trouble on lap 1.
Doesn't appear to be any major troubles already. That seems to be a good sign. Never mind, at least one driver missed a corner. Thankfully, they're the only driver.
Oh no, Dave Menino off the road. He's going to fall behind the entirety of the LMP2 field. But other than that, it looks to be a remarkably trouble-free start. The single file start really seemed to help things there and really seemed to keep more people alive. Daniel Harris, who started on pole so many times last season, has been able to hang on and currently nurses a half a second lead over Pat Pelshaw. That is pretty healthy at Long Beach, and he's going to hope that once we reach that lap traffic in a couple dozen minutes time, that changes. Side by side, deeper in the field between 2 Acuras through the final sector. That is immensely difficult to do, and that's going to be sorted out before the hairpin. Oh, no, it's not. It is not going to be sorted out through the hairpin because there was some bullying going on there, an absolute send, and I believe that's Aiden Young getting through.
Yeah, that was a little bit dicey for Aiden Young to send at least fiercely up the inside. Very lucky he didn't cause a massive stack up there with that bit of a send. As another one to the barrier.
Ooh, Zach Hebert around into turn 1, and he is going to have to do an Austin Powers turnaround as he's stuck between the barriers. The Echelon Sim Sport driver goes all the way to the back of the field and comes out right behind the LMP2 leader, Jack Hedgecox. That was almost big trouble for the LMP2 leader.
Yeah, that could have been very tricky and very bad on some of these timings up front. At the very least, the top two for GTP, they're looking to run away, and never mind as, hello!
And there is a huge collision between Ryan O'Connor and another GTP. Did not see who that was. May have been Georgiev. No, Georgiev is in separate trouble of his own on the back straight. That was Nicholas Schwartz who got into trouble with Ryan O'Connor. And at his home race, in his first race of the PRL, Georgiev not having a great time. In fact, I think he's pretty crabby.
Yeah, that car is absolutely crabbing around, and is going to be very lucky if it's not seafood at the seafood place nearby at this rate. But at this point, you're talking about drivers like Aiden Young and a couple others really not making friends with the amount of big-time lunches we're seeing.
Borland and Nathan Ray were side-by-side through turn 1. It's tight quarters around Long Beach, but it's absolutely wide enough to run side-by-side. And at the end of Shoreline Drive into turn 1, there were clearly two GTPs wide there, and Will Borland made that work on Nathan Ray.
Yeah, that is a part of the process here when it comes to tonight, because never mind.
Go in into the wall. Big trouble for him. Long Beach has once again bitten. We'll catch a replay of that when it's loaded up, but these have all been single car incidents for the most part, Justin. Other than the Ryan O'Connor spin, which was ahead of Nathan Schwartz, it has been single car mistakes, and here is Nicholas going into the wall.
And you know, one of the worst ways to beat yourself at a race like this tonight is beating yourself. And that's what I was going to say is, if you end up losing spots, it's mostly because it's on you. It's not as simple as, okay, it's about the car. 90% of this race tonight is about how well and how confident you can stick into the corners. A lot of these drivers in turn 1 are missing the braking mark by a good 5 feet, and that's been enough to cause absolute chaos.
Battles at the back of the field in LMP2, Bel Air. Michael Bel Air, he's the Fresh Prince of Bel Air here in Los Angeles, getting around Edward Vardanesian. There is racing all throughout the field here, and these guys are going to be the first drivers to run into trouble, I think, once the GTP leaders start to reach lap traffic. Bel Air and Vardanesian 55 seconds behind Harris and Pelshaw right now. They're going to start dealing with lap traffic before we expect it.
Especially with how things are playing in the early going. But also, it was expected that we may see some overlap eventually, but not as quick as some of the races here. Here's the major thing with some of these stack-ups right now, the time is really bleeding ahead compared to some of the races. And then you have some of the GTPs slower than the LMP2 leaders and nearly running them over.
Yeah, this is very awkward right now. That's Jack Hedgecox behind Zach Hebert and Adam McDonald. And he seems to be faster through the third sector of the track than those two GTPs. He absolutely loses them down Shoreline Drive. The straight line speed is simply unmatched. But through the tight and twisty third sector, Hedgecox in an LMP2 is faster than some damaged GTPs. And that is exceptionally awkward, Justin.
How about extremely, extremely, extremely awkward with how races like this go? Because when you end up having yourself slower than the secondary class or the ladder class for a race like this, it's a very big deflator. And it really says a lot in terms of how comfortable you are with the car when you're getting passed by the slower class. If you are at that point, it's time to put in some work for practice next week.
This is probably demoralizing stuff, I think, for Joshua Chinsky in second in LMP2, because Jack Hedgecox, coming into the season as the defending LMP2 champion, he had a target on his back. He is absolutely the favorite this season, winning 5 out of 10 races last season, being totally dominant in all 5 of those races. He absolutely has a target on his back, and everybody behind him had to raise their level to even think about matching him. But we had trouble at the back of LMP2 into turn 1, locking up the brakes, and a nice little kiss of the wall. That could have been far worse for Edward Vardanesian.
Yeah, with how some of these angles are and some of these contacts, that's an understatement with how this racetrack's been. But it comes down to a matter of inches when it comes to the racing line, when it comes to just hitting the line just right. And up front, Daniel Harris is doing a great job, especially since some of that traffic you were talking about just about crashed themselves out of the way.
Yeah, that was Vardanesian, I think, getting out of the way in a somewhat unorthodox way, but getting out all the same. Harris hangs on to the lead, and he's another driver who came into this season as, I think, the favorite in this championship. He didn't win the GTP championship last season, despite having 7 poles and 3 wins. We'll get back to that, though, because Nathan Ray is basically in Anaheim right now. That's how far off of the track he is. He's got to do a 17-point turn to find his way back on the road.
That is not a good spot to rejoin, because even though you're looking straight on the field, you're talking about having to take a direct 90-degree turn back onto the circuit. Nathan Ray started off solid. It's not looking good now, and that car is pretty much toast.
Yep, I think that was a car giving up, I think, for Nathan Ray through turn 10 there. That is not what you like to see. But Mark McDonald in that bright, shiny GTP. How about another bright, shiny car instead? The number 64, nearly side-by-side into turn 1. The 24 and the 64 going at it. Nick Silver and Andrew Wood, they're going to get back single file. They're going to sort things out. Andrew Wood, how long has he been on iRacing? Connecticut's own very experienced driver. I think he knows that it's probably not the smartest to go for a late lunge into turn 1.
Yeah, and you don't want to go for a massive send to the corner per se. Yes, you could do it well if it's expected. You go for the unexpected lunge. That's where you end up not making friends. Oh, and this is not good. You now have the drivers dead last for those in front of the LMP2s, I should say. Now really backing up the LMP2 leaders at this point. That's what we're talking about.
And Chinsky is loving the fact that this is holding up Hedgecox, but he's not really able to close into draft range. There might be trouble into turn 1, though, as Zach Hebert gets to the inside of Mark Kalin and outbreaks him into turn 1. Kalin not really interested in fighting that. He knows that Hebert qualified up in the top 10 and is at the back through no fault of his own. That's going to be sorted out, but it might not be sorted out if there's another mistake from Hebert. If they slow each other down again, Jack Hedgecox is going to be saying, what do I have to do to find clean air?
And you may be thinking, for some, okay, why would clean air be important? Well, clean air is more so in this context for a track like this. We're talking about so space to operate. Because right now, when you have no space to work with those in front, keeping things checked back up, but then in turn, you flip that over to where you end up getting pushed back into your competition, adds a lot more extra pressure with some of these battles around the racetrack.
Darian Roy, Porsche, Eric Palacio, Acura, JR Williams to the inside of his teammate into turn 1, and Palacio says, okay, JR, if you want to go for it, you can have it. I'm not running side-by-side with you through the fountain section. Jack Hedgecox is running side-by-side with Mark Kalin, GTP versus LMP2 down Shoreline Drive, and there is big trouble at the hairpin. That's Jeremy Carter in the Benke Media LMP2. Everybody gets it pointed straight, but that was nearly a track blocker at the hairpin.
Yeah, there were some wows over the radio, I think, for what was just seen there. That's how big that sequence is. That could have been a lot worse with the amount of scraping we're already hearing across the track. Especially on sets like that, and especially when you park perpendicular to the whole racetrack.
Well, it kicked off with Dave Menino. That was Menino in the GTP in the 3 who got into the back of that LMP2, punted him around in the hairpin. But once again, we are lucky that that was not a worse incident. Everybody was able to get out of the way, and we're able to continue with green flag racing. It would be green flag racing either way. There are no automatic cautions or even admin thrown cautions on the roadside in the Precision Racing League. If there were, there would be one for Aiden Young, who just looped it around the hairpin.
And there goes the fiercely forward machine that made sure to gather all of their friends before all this. And I'm pretty sure somebody said, okay, I'm going to have to dodge this. It was simply on his own. Jeff Evans is lucky he didn't get involved, I think.
And Aiden says, I'm going to minimize my losses here. I'm going to bring it down pit lane. Here it is, just off the corner. Smokes the tires, and I think Jeff probably would have been a little bit surprised there to see the driver of Aiden Young's caliber. Even he cannot avoid the street circuit mistakes that seem to befell us all.
Absolutely. But that LMP2 lead is absolutely trapped at this point because I think the 77 is the quickest of the group. And the second he gets around Mark Halen, I think he runs. But the problem is, Mark Halen continues to just back it up, just struggling on corner entry, trying to back up the entries, but is also slower on exit compared to what we're seeing for the LMP2 leaders. And while you maybe think, well, part of that may be the ability to save a bit of gas here in the midst of this train, it gets to the point where you're nearly running into the back end of a GTP where it gets different as Carroll, well, loop-de-loop time.
Carroll Carousel, there was trouble for Pat Pelshaw as well. Second place in GTP, he's down to third. We'll look at that when we can. But once again, Kalen streaks away. Here it is, Pat Pelshaw coming up on the scene of that spun LMP2. A little bit of target fixation maybe, and Pat Pelshaw loses out on second.
Yeah, and keep in mind, Pat was expected to be a contender throughout this entire race there, but now is starting to build up a couple mistakes, if anything, because of those slip and slides. And we talked about if you hit the curbs too hard, you're going to be very difficult to be able to try and get a recovery going. Here we go, though. Looks like Mark Halen is up for grabs. The LMP2 leaders are starting to show they want to go.
Oh, that was a bad exit onto Seaside Way for Jack Hedgecox, though. For the first time, Chinsky gets to take a peek. He swerves to the inside. Can he be later on the brakes into turn 9? He's going to be side by side with Hedgecox, rubbing fenders, rubbing bumpers side by side through the final sector, and Chinsky is forced to slot back in line. That is absolutely crazy stuff in LMP2, and Mark Kalen sees the drama behind him and says, maybe I'm causing a little bit too much of a checkup here. I think I'm coming down pit lane now. Hedgecox is free, Chinsky is free, and Ziti is free to try and take second into turn 1, the 50 to the inside of his teammate. Is he going to be able to steal second away? Yes, he is.
Lots of shoving and pushing around in the midst of all this is, again, exactly what I think was about to happen. The second they opened the door, the GTP in front, there's a chance for him to run away. Now it's the matter of, can Jack do so without making mistakes? Look at the difference already. He's got a lot more space to run. He's gaining car lengths on Blake Ziti on every exit.
And I'm thinking now, with Mark Kalen's pit stop, would anybody in this field, Justin, potentially have been smart to pit themselves? Because right as I say this, Adam McDonald has had an issue of his own on the Seaside Way. He's going to be the next GTP car to be holding up this LMP2 train. Jack Hedgecox is going to be screaming right now. And if you're Joshua Chinsky, say in third, maybe this is your chance to bring it down pit lane and get out of traffic.
I think there's a possibility because, well, first of all, we're only 15 minutes in. Yes, it's only been 15 minutes. That's how busy this race has gone. It's felt like it's been an hour and a half with the way things are shaping.
Ziti's coming, Justin, into turn 1 in the draft. He's the first driver who's actually been able to make an attack on Hedgecox into turn 1. They're going to be side by side. Hedgecox around the outside, hangs on though.
Yeah, that was another bold play. Try and get the set by the time you force them single file for the fountain. But back to the point I was about to make in terms of the pit stop strategy sequences here. I think right now the strategy still stretch it as long as you can. But the difference is that this racetrack is potentially the conservation methods of trying to find a clean pocket. Also, there's the conversation of if you're getting to the point where you're getting held up so much you can save. I wonder if there's the chance someone tries to stretch it. It's not as likely with a 65% fuel limit this season.
I do wonder. I think back, obviously, to a different series in the GT3 Sprint Series. We've seen drivers like Guillaume Levique, we've seen Vincent Trepanier, and we've got teammates tripping over each other into the hairpin. Chinsky peeks to the inside of his teammate and slows both of them down. That's going to give Hedgecox some very, very big distance between himself and the fighting SRT drivers behind.
Well, that wasn't a little bit too frustrating, was it? I think, though, at that same point, Lehman was just a little bit deeper on the brake, and it wasn't as good of a run on the exit for Chinsky. But right now, for Ziti, it's Now time to try and run away as that lead car. They're scraping the walls behind them.
Just trying to get the paint off of them, trying to clean them up, trying to use every inch of this Long Beach street circuit. ZD a second behind Hedgecox now. Hedgecox about 2 seconds behind Adam McDonald now. Is this finally going to be a little bit of normalcy for Jack Hedgecox? Can he finally stretch the legs of that LMP2 and run away? He's certainly hoping so. I think that's going to be the end of the drama in LMP2 for now. Up in GTP, Daniel Harris has actually been able to avoid all drama, and he has been absolutely mistake-free since the start of this race. He's got a 2.5-second lead over Ryan Skolny, and he is just about to deal with the first little bits of LMP2 traffic. But I bring up Daniel Harris because, as I was saying a little bit ago, he had a very, very strong season last season. He was without a doubt the fastest driver. Put it on pole 7 times, won only 3 times though. The start of the season, he was his own worst enemy, made a few mistakes, and that was the end of his championship before it even started. But in the latter half of the season, threw away those mistakes, won a bunch of races, and he's coming into this season with full confidence and easily the championship favorite. The question is, Justin, though, can he do it? The pressure's back on. Can he withstand it?
Well, in terms of a full context of a season, it's about making sure to limit any mistakes you have, but more so, making sure that you don't have to rely on the draw. I think it's more so up to, in the case of a lot of these drivers, even in the context of some of the top runners in terms of the question of can he defend it or can he run the championship, I think it's quite simply, it's all up to how you drive it yourself. Right now for Daniel Harris, I think he's in a great prime position, at least with what he's showing with the starting going. Now, for later in the season, I think Pat's going to be a big competition for the championship. With how things are looking already this season, I think those are going to be your 2 favorites absolutely to follow in. It's more so who can make sure they limit any damage when they have a rough race. And in this series, one bad race can cost you the title.
I've got to give Ryan Skolny a lot of credit as well, not just for that very beautiful paint scheme that's easily differentiable from the rest of the field, but he got ahead of Pelshaw after that mistake, and he has stayed ahead. He hasn't made a single mistake, even with the pressure of a race winner behind him. As a driver who seems to be very comfortable in top-level prototype machinery, this is as good of a debut in this series as you can ask for Ryan Skolny.
An extremely good one, to be quite frank. But for Skolny, it's more so taking advantage of some of those mistakes from Pat, and since then it's kind of proven. He's got solid pace. The problem is Daniel Harris is quickest on the racetrack in the class. When in clean space, he's running a couple tenths of a second quicker. The problem is a lot of times they are reaching the traffic that's pushing them far back in the midst of these trains.
And Chris Walsh kicks off the pit cycle. He's the first driver to pit. Is he going to be one of the only drivers to pit? Will it be possible to make it to the end of this race on 0 pit stops? That's what we're going to have to wait and see. But this is a little bit awkward right now. Daniel Harris catches one of Ryan Skolny's teammates, although it's a teammate in the LMP2 class. Holds up Harris just a little bit. Immediately peels off onto pit lane, though. I believe that was Dakota Tabler, the number 34 for Podium Hunters, bringing it down pit lane. And that is going to be the first of the first LMP2 car with no damage to actually bring it down pit lane. That is the kickoff of that pit cycle. Mark McDonald in GTP. Nice to look at this shiny car again, making his way through LMP2 traffic.
The tough part about being a part of that grouping of stretching it to the end on gas, though, is it goes right back to that looping around the fuel limit. Because the normal fuel run for these cars, when you aren't saving, for the LMP2 is about 40 laps. GTP is a little further now, around the 45. However, you try and limit that fuel a little bit, it makes it much more difficult to try and stretch that gas. You're talking about needing to stretch it an extra 5-10 minutes here in terms of the time. And quite simply, that could be much bigger of a challenge than some people may realize.
Riding on board with Nathan Bartley, the Precision Racing Esports Acura versus the Rust Racing Porsche of Mark McDonald. Bartley takes a peek to the inside at the end of the straight, but nothing doing there. Just trying to put a little bit of fear into the eyes of Mark McDonald. And through the very long turn 10, the hairpin of turn 11, hand over hand in the hairpin, Bartley still has a face full of Porsche, and it's a little bit more distant than it was in the previous lap.
McDonald so far has looked pretty solid on speed, though, all throughout this one, because he's kept it fairly clean, but has also been one of the more efficient ones in traffic, notice, because that's where he's getting a lot of his time. He reaches traffic, he gets it done in the right spot. His competitor behind, Nathan Bartley, is reaching the traffic in the exact wrong spots, it seems. Take, for example, Nick Silver. 24 machine up in front, one of the Boone Esports drivers, normally an oval driver, as they're slamming the walls once again.
Knock down the walls, chubby checker style. I love this color, by the way, Justin. I just need to point out, that is a beautiful ice blue. There were ice cold or white hot tires, rather, there with Nathan Bartley sliding around a little bit. But what a beautiful color that is. That reminds me of the news release we saw the other day about Neptune. The fact that, you know the planet Neptune, how it's normally depicted as dark blue. It's actually the color of Nathan Bartley's car. And maybe that's doing him some good luck. He's in the color of Neptune, and he's racing like a Roman god.
Yep. Near contact to the walls, but that's exactly what I was just talking about. Bartley just about lost a fair bit of time because of the traffic timing, but settled it out. And that's one of the big challenges of a class race like this, when you have very similar speed, is can you get it done quickly and efficiently? Look at this, though. Daniel Harris has fallen off a cliff. He's running 3/10 a lap slower right now in the 22. What has happened to Harris?
Is he backing off potentially to make it to the end of the race? Has he been expending too much fuel, and now he says, the fuel's not looking too good. We got 21 more minutes left to race. Maybe I need to back the pace off a little bit and control the pace of the top three.
I think that's part of it, but also just he was starting to show signs of it when he was in traffic. Now he's looking even worse out of the traffic on terms of stopwatch. 11 flat, the drivers behind 2/10 quicker, and now they're about to reach Matt Carroll and company. So you're talking about even more traffic factor on in here. The numbers are not looking great for Harris at the end of this run. Even when you're thinking about, is he saving gas or is he saving energy store, you're talking about losing yourself about 2 seconds of cushion and is struggling on corner exit.
If you're tuning into this series for the first time, it's not a normal thing for cars to be able to go to the end of the race with no pit stop. There's a 65% fuel limit in GTP. There's an 85% fuel limit in LMP2. This usually forces a pit stop in every one of these 40-minute races. The pit stop's not required by the rules, though. It's only required by the laws of physics, usually. And at a street circuit like this, where you're running at a slower pace for the majority of the time, you can save fuel, and you can potentially cut a pit stop out. So that's one of the unique things about Long Beach and other street circuits. We don't often see this in the Precision Racing League, but we see a fuel mileage race, and Daniel Harris is trying to make fuel mileage while suddenly dealing with the entirety of the LMP2 field right ahead of him.
And it's a nervous part of this at this mark, because there's a whole queue of cars, first of all, that are struggling at the tail end of the runs. We're talking about 2 seconds slower. That may, if anything, if Daniel Harris has the right spots reach here, go right back in his way, because you're talking about a queue of your GTP leaders here that are not going to be stuck for entire sectors here if they don't clear fast down some of the lone straights.
Skolny having a little bit of trouble with the number 221 of Matthew Falk. He's going to get through coming into turn 6, and Falk gets out of the way. Then down into turn 8, Harris down to the next driver. I believe that's going to be the number 55 of Karsten Quint to the inside of the 27, actually. And there goes Daniel Harris through, I believe, one of the LMP2 cars who has suffered damage and is a few laps down. That's going to make his life a little bit easier coming into the final sector. Or coming out of the final sector now.
Yeah, and this is, I think, in terms of Harris, more so down to how much speed he's picking up down the straights. We're talking 10 miles an hour quicker down some of the straightaways here. Some of the others, though, are getting really held up there in that battle for second in class, as hearing there's some pit stops across the field starting to build up.
Yeah, Michael Diaz coming in GTP. That was actually Luke Wallace, by the way, in the 27 LMP2. This is the top 5 now in LMP2 that Harris and the gang are dealing with. Coming up to Zegers, coming up to Lehman, and coming up to Ziti, Chinsky, and Hedgecox. These are going to be the toughest guys to pass because they are the fastest. They are the most similar in pace to the GTP class. And now Harris finds himself behind Caleb Lehman, this SRT train that has given us some of the most entertainment we've seen all day. He might be a little bit scared to be trying to pass these guys for the first time.
I don't know if I would say scared is the word. I think it's more so he needs some give and take and hopes to get it, because it's not been as simple as, okay, GTP leaders here, let's let them go, because some of them have been fighting.
Oh, Mark McDonald and Nathan Bartley, remember their battle a few laps ago? Well, it appears to have come to blows coming onto Seaside Way. It was into turn 8. I think that may have been the byproduct of a frustrating battle that hadn't changed, and you see Nathan Bartley pulling off to the side of the road there, right off of turn 10. That's going to be the end of his day, and here it is, coming down the hill into turn 8. Are we about to see a Pato Award Scott Dixon situation? Yes, indeed we are.
And if anything, both of them ended up getting terrible hits, so that's going to end both of the races in their contention, basically. Window was open, wide open, though, for pit stops. GTP leaders already peeling down, and some of their classmates have already peeled on down. That answers that respective question. It's around the time I was expecting, based on the trends in the series' history, with the fuel limitations, where we see pit stops, around 10 to 15 minutes to go. Now, it's about the execution for said pit stop window. Second and third at GTP still held up. Does Daniel Harris elect to peel it in? No, not yet. But the LMP2 leaders will.
Blake Ziti into pit lane. Chinsky as well. Lehman as well. The SRT drivers have linked up. Clearly they think it's the strategy of choice to come in with about 16 minutes to go. All 3 drivers for one team banking on this strategy to work. Caleb Lehman getting stopped diagonally in the box. He's going to be able to leave all the same, but those are some very different pit stop times for the 3 teammates. Chinsky, 7.2 seconds. I think Ziti was only 4.8 seconds.
And now, keep an eye on how these drivers fill up the tanks here. About 9 or 10 seconds, depending on these cars. And I think the further you go, the less amount of gas you're going to have to take, simple as that, because you don't have to go as far on the distance. I know that's straightforward in terms of the logical thinking, but that's exactly what you're thinking if you're in the field here. This is why you save, in case you go further, save that extra 1 or 2 seconds in the pit lane, and boom, you end up jumping somebody.
Darian Roy's been gifted a couple of spots with the crashes of McDonald and Bartley, with Ovando and Diaz pitting, but he would still be in P8 without all those things, so still a great run for Darian Roy, a driver who's moved up from the LMP2 class last season up into the GTP class this season. Doing very, very well at the street circuit in between the concrete walls. Jack Hedgecock's in LMP2 has brought it down pit lane. Clearly he thinks he can't make it to the end, and he's come in with 15 minutes to go to put 9 seconds of fuel in the car. I don't know if that's a savable amount, Justin, but Jack Hedgecock clearly thinks, I can't make it to the end.
Yeah, I think that's pretty clear. Once again, I know there was a lot of thoughts on the full distance. Hold on, P2 just had a crash in GTP.
Ryan Skolny having such a great day in second on his PRL GTP debut, and it has ended in tragedy. It's not over, but he's got heavy damage, and he is going to be struggling till the end of this race, right ahead of Luke Wallace, and I think one of the lapped cars there. But here he is coming up on a spun LMP2 car. I don't know who that was. He disappeared too quickly, but that is so unfortunate. It was Carson Quint right ahead of Daniel Harris, actually, I believe, and then right ahead of Ryan Skolny.
Unreal, I think, is just a quite simple statement. Unreal with how things have gone in this one. You're talking about Skolny, who is playing everything right, and then you end up having that situation happen. It gets a fair bit frustrating, but there's also nowhere you could go in that sequence when you're talking about a blind corner.
Look at the gap between Ziti and Hedgecock now, 4.5 seconds. That is insurmountable, I think, unless Hedgecock runs into trouble with lap traffic. So that's going to allow the 2 SRT teammates to go gloves off and fight for this position. I think that's Mark Kalin in trouble off the hairpin. That's going to allow Chinsky to get a fantastic exit. He's going to be in the draft of his teammate Blake Ziti, and we're going to see SRT teammates side by side into turn 1 once again.
And Another roar through. ZD continuing to slip back if you consider things right now. He, if anything's lost a bit of time in that battle for the overall race lead at LMP2. Oh, wow. You have a lot of traffic starting to flip and converge forward here. For reference, Nick Silver is amongst those who's already shuffled up. He's yet to pit, who's in the midst of this train.
That was very smart from Chinsky there, not to send it side by side into turn 1 with the GTP coming out of the pits, but he is still hungry, peeking to the inside into turn 6. Is he going to look for it into turn 8? Nope, he's going to say that's a bad idea. He's going to try and nail ZD on the exit here, down Seaside Way, under the bridges. Chinsky is hungry, Chinsky is aggressive, and he is trying to take this spot back. He was ahead of ZD in qualifying, he was ahead of ZD in the opening minutes, and now he's trying to take it back in the closing minutes.
I can see the teammates at this point saying, okay, let's race it out. We know it's a battle for second, possibly.
Oh, he turns ZD, or at least gets into the side of him. The two teammates interlocking. That is not what they wanted. Here comes the GTP of Nicholas Schwartz behind. But the two teammates, they said it was gloves off, and that was almost a little bit of a punch.
What did I just say? Very likely they race it out. I think more so ZD possibly there got loose and lit up the rear tires. More so than a teammate trying to spin another teammate there. But at that point, they're lucky that ZD was able to hold on and save it without pitching them both into the pit wall.
And it almost looked into turn 1 like ZD was going to let his teammate by. I think he might actually do exactly that. Coming into turn 6 here. No, he is going to hang on, but it really looked like ZD was slowing down early, giving the inside to his teammate. I don't think he's going to do that just yet. I think both of them may have communicated that, you know, we were both kind of parts of that. I don't think we need to switch positions at all. They're going to do battle again because Chinsky's closed up the back of him. We'll see the natural order of that battle finishing up.
I think that natural order of operations as battle will start settle out. Fifth on back right now at this point. About to see a lot of shuffling here with a couple of the drivers really starting to stretch at LMP2. And you're talking about the top 3 in GTP. As expected to get it as far as they can. Expect them maybe the next time by at latest if the trend sticks.
Daniel Harris still staying out, 10 minutes on the clock, and he says, I am still good. Pelshot's still out there. Roy is still out there. Zach Hebert is still out there. The lead driver who has pitted, Michael Diaz, in 4th, has had an absolutely fantastic pit cycle. Once everything cycles out, if the 2 drivers ahead, or if the 3 drivers ahead do end up pitting, Michael Diaz is going to be on the podium after starting 6th at Long Beach. It's been a phenomenal day for him. Hebert and Walsh are side by side. Now this is for position. Walsh has pitted, Hebert hasn't, and Hebert is going to slot in behind. Walsh hangs on, at least for the moment. He's got a very hungry Hebert behind him, though, who's going to desperately try to get by him the next chance he gets.
And I think now that we're getting very close to that mark for your top runners in some of these classes, I think the conversation point has to be in about, is it going to be time? Because this traffic is getting back bad. Hebert has to still come in, mind you. Looks like he's been able to save an extra lap here in the midst of this. Chris Walsh is already pit. He's on the very big undercut call. If anything, Walsh has got himself a lot of positions because of this call, because he found some open space. You're talking about possibly Diaz and Walsh in the podium conversation.
And Harrison Pelshot, 1 and 2 in GTP. They have brought it down pit lane. You cannot make it to the end of the race in GTP. The 65% fuel limit in the Precision Racing League says, nope, you're going to be forced to make a pit stop. But who is going to have the shorter of the 2 stops? Harris had over a 2-second lead as he came into the pits. Has he been able to save as much fuel as Pelshot in the lead of the race, though? The clock ticks up. It's been about 10 seconds for everybody else in the field. It's going to be 10. It's going to be 10.8 seconds for Harris. It's going to be a little bit shorter for Pelshot, but not short enough to really be within touching distance. It's going to be about 1.5 seconds separating the 2 for the final 8 minutes of this race.
Yeah, especially with the difference of where they're able to accelerate with that green cone compared to the blue cone rejoin. Oh, that was borderline on these drivers for the rejoin, though. They got close, as here we go again.
Zach Hebert, that's the same place he lost it last time, I think. That's into the braking zone in turn 9. He's going to scrape a little bit of paint off the white side of that car again, but he is making good friends with the safety workers down in that runoff area.
I'm curious if something just happened to Blake Ziti, though. He's got the cross black flag all of a sudden. We have a disqualification.
Could be an incident limit for Blake Ziti. You only get 13 incident points before you're forced to serve a drive-through in the Precision Racing League. You only get 17 before you're disqualified altogether. Remember, he had contact with his teammate off the hairpin. That's a 4X. He may have reached 17 incident points already.
That's unbelievable. I don't even think he served a drive-through yet. So it's the question of, okay, where'd he pick up all these penalties? And part of that, remember, that contact with his own teammate might have been enough to put him on the edge and out from, okay, I'm close to, I'm in panic mode.
But the battle for the overall race lead is getting a little bit more spicy now. Harris cutting his way through LMP2 traffic. He has interclass GTP traffic right ahead of him, or intra-class traffic, I should say. He is going to be dealing with a slower driver in his own class, and that is going to be much more difficult to get by than an LMP2 car. If Pat Pelshot can get through those two LMP2s behind and Harris gets stuck behind Palacio, well, he's not going to get stuck behind Palacio now because Palacio loses the rear off of turn 5. That simplifies things a little bit.
If any, oh, hearing their tempers are flaring up here, Bradley Holly amongst those who've hit the fountain.
Oh,
he hit the fountain and he hits the wall and everybody hits him.
Oh. That's a fireworks show of carbon fiber parts with Bradley Holly getting every panel of that car sheared off by the traffic coming on. That's just kicking a man while he's down. Speaking of kicking things while they're down, the LMP2 fuel saving strategy has come to an end. Daniel Zegers finally forced to pit, and I have to imagine that Josh Goen, the only other straggler, I have to imagine he's coming in soon as well.
Especially with all the damage at this point, as you're in this Carson Quinn. And that was a rough entry, and that was an even worse shot from behind. Wow.
Yeah, that was not ideal for Karsten Quint. I think somehow managed to hit about 2 cars there. But his pain is now over, and I think he's off the track. Daniel Zegers is actually going to cycle out in 4th in LMP2. It's been a great pit cycle for him. He jumps Chinsky and Lehman, and Jeremy Carter right ahead of him is going to get onto the podium. Chinsky has now gotten by Zegers, by the way, so that's shifted around a little bit. Skalny and Ovando, the battle for 5th. It's not a battle anymore into turn 1. Skalny clear of Ovando easily, and at least back up into the top 5.
And if you're Boris Ovando, I think that almost sets up a sign of needing to look at things possibly, because Ryan Skalny, despite the fact that front nose is completely crunched into the right side, absolutely running away with that spot.
Jeff Evans has been having a pretty quiet day so far, which is a very big accomplishment at Long Beach. He's up into the top 10, and it doesn't look like he has a single scratch on that bright pink Acura GTP, Justin. It's been a pretty remarkable day for Jeff Evans.
Extremely, at the way things are going here. But give him credit. He survived the chaos. Now, I want to go back to that conversation. Josh Goen. We're not talking about the other Goen we were talking about. You're talking about, never mind, Josh Goen just stopped in missed turn 1.
No, Justin, you've cursed him. It comes for all of us. And at the corner that befell his brother, it's like a Greek tragedy for Josh Goen. And he is off of the lead. And he still has to make a pit stop. That is punching this guy while he's down. Goen still has to pit. Carter still has to pit as well. If they can make it the next 4 minutes, they could still be on the podium, but that is going to be so difficult, especially with having to expend a little bit of fuel to turn yourself back around.
Yeah, that is an understatement, because I think he was in a prime position there, at least to get a top 3 right before that situation. But you missed the corner that badly. You throw away your opportunities, and now you have people like Joshua Chinsky saying, let's hit the wall.
Let's hit the wall indeed. Just make this car a little bit less wide. You know, knock a couple inches off the Dallara P217. Might as well make through tech at the end. But Chinsky now reaches the back of Goen. Is he going to be able to get by him on the front straight? He's going to have to think about it. But he also might not think about it, because Goen may decide to take a hard right and bring it down pit lane. He doesn't. He's going to the end. I think he's committed to this.
I mean, he's made his bet. We were talking about the potential of anyone stretch it. Gowen's in absolute conservation mode. To the point where Chinsky's about to run him over here. That's how much quicker, despite the fact the entire right side is basically nearly sheared off Chinsky's car. He's pushing.
Couple of 90-degree corners, lift off a little bit, save a little bit of fuel, but Chinsky, as we ride on board with him with a camera embedded in the nose, he is sending this car so much deeper into the corners, into turn 6, into turn 8 coming up. He's going to be setting up the exit, he's going to be setting up a run in the draft, and he is going to be trying to steal the podium off of his fellow Josh. It's not the exit he needed, though. He's not going to be close enough down Seaside Way this time. And he's running out of chances as they cross the line. It's going to be about 2.5 minutes to go. That's only going to be about 3 laps for Joshua Chinsky to get by.
I think Chinsky has the opportunity. The second go win once again, gets on the clutch. Try and go a little bit on the inside. The problem is Chinsky's so quick on corner apex, he's costing himself every chance the more he has to check himself up here.
But this is going to be so heartbreaking. Even if Gowen does hang on to third, he would have had the win if not for that mistake. Into turn 1, here comes Chinsky. Peeked it to the inside, and he peeks it into the wall. Chinsky hits the wall in turn 1, keeps going. But that was a hard hit, and you have to imagine that number 18 car is going to be hurting after that.
I mean, it's already been hurting on the right side. May as well add a little bit more hurt. It just add a little bit more of a broken bone to the other broken bone. But again, you're talking about someone who's having to really back off the pace 2-3 seconds, possibly in terms of going to make it on the gas. Chinsky still has a shot. If anything, it's the 3 who has a chance to pick up multiple spots. Or Daniel Zangers, I should say.
As if things aren't spicy enough, they've got a little bit of LMP2 traffic coming up. Boris Ovando, or a little bit of GTP traffic coming up, rather. Boris Ovando and Ryan Skalny are coming up to lap these LMP2s once again. There's a terrible exit, and there goes Josh Gowen. He's forced to pit. He could not make it to the end, and with 2 laps to go, he came tantalizingly close, and he's been forced to pit anyway.
You know who's still out there? Who's yet to pit?
Jeremy Carter.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, he might have a shot here. He's running the same pace. Obviously hasn't made any mistakes on the track. I don't know if this is still going to be enough because of what we just seen for the other attempt, but he hasn't been really pressured compared to what we just seen.
Could he make it to the end? And I think he's going to be thinking back to the past too, Justin, because remember, I believe when Dave Menino got into the back of one of the LMP2s into the hairpin, it was Carter who got held up. But the white flag's in the air. Daniel Harris has 1 more lap to go. Only about 60 seconds once he gets through turn 1, and he will be en route to his 4th win in the Precision Racing League. He's still got to survive 1 more lap, though. It's Long Beach. Those walls can always bite. It's a little bit of a victory lap for Daniel Harris, though.
I mean, he nearly just got a bite from the fountain and the side wall of said fountain as he tried to go over the flower bed. But that was his only mistake of the day, honestly.
Through turn 6. Saw him flashing the lights a little bit in the braking zone. Maybe a little bit of showboating, maybe just a little bit of fun, because he has been in control of this race for the entirety of it. Giving the fans on the bridges a little bit of a show. But for a guy who started last season with absolute heartbreak, with a crash from pole, he's going to start his 2nd season in the Precision Racing League in the best way possible. He's come into 2024 Season 1 as the favorite, and he is even more so the favorite now as out of the hairpin, Daniel Harris is going to come to the line to win at Long Beach and win in GTP for the 4th time. Pat Pelshaw, a great fight from him as well, though, to finish 2nd. And you go about 15 seconds down the road, Michael Diaz, who started deeper in the field than he's used to starting in GTP, the strategy went his way, and he's going to finish on the podium to join his teammate Pat Pelshaw on the Long Beach podium. Chris Walsh as well in 4th, gave him a fantastic shout out for his strategy run, and Jack Hedgecox comes to the line to win yet again in LMP2. You talk about Harris being the championship favorite in GTP. Hedgecox won the championship in LMP2 last season. Chinsky and Zegers in a photo finish to the line. Chinsky's going to hang on to 3rd, and Jeremy Carter on a 0 stop is going to bring it to the line in second place. A phenomenal run for Carter, and you have to think what might have been if he didn't get held up in that little pile up at the hairpin, if he didn't get crashed in that incident. Could he have won this race? Well, only the theoreticals will be able to tell us that. But what a day, Justin. Craziness at Daytona, craziness at Long Beach, and it ends with possibly the least crazy scenario, Harris and Hedgecock's both winning.
And here's another quick shout out. Andrew Wood, the Woodman, ended up running out of gas at the stripe on the same strategy as the one who finished in second. A drag race to get 7th as well. Wood, mind you, was running in the teens all day before that call.
Well, at the end of 45 minutes of Long Beach racing, it's finally time to take a look at the books. Daniel Harris comes home with the win in the Porsche, ahead of the Acuras from Precision Racing Esports. They're going to have a great day in the Teams Championship. Pelsha and Diaz on the podium. Chris Walsh, solo driver, no teammates, finishes 4th ahead of Ryan Skolny. Boris Ovando, P6, and then Williams, Roy Borland, and Jeff Evans down to the end of the top 10. Those were all the lead lap finishers, because Eric Palacio and Zach Hebert and Dave Menino all ended up 1 lap down. Mark Kalin 3 laps down with Nathan Ray, and then we get into the used car lot of the heavily damaged Bradley Holly, Adam McDonald, Anthony Dring, Mark McDonald, and Nicholas Schwartz, who got into trouble as well. Joining them, Nathan Bartley had a great day going. It ended in tears in 21st. Calvin Mayant, Gregor Georgiev, 2 debutants are going to come back for more glory next week. Aiden Young and Ryan O'Connor. Their experience was no help at Long Beach, unfortunately. They both ended in the wall. Jack Hedgecox wins again in LMP2. Once again, the championship favorite. How many races is he going to win this season? That's the big question. Jeremy Carter, 0, stopped to 2nd. Joshua Chinsky on the podium. Daniel Zegers almost took it away from him, but on his return to the PRL, he's still going to be pretty happy with P4. Lehman, Wallace, Andrew Wood, Maltsev, and Josh Goen bring us down to the end of the lead lap finishers, and Nick Silver picks up a top 10 1 lap down just for surviving. Michael Belair, Ryan Chandler, and Nathan Mon all had pretty quiet days, which is a pretty big accomplishment. Then Matthew Falk, John Leedy, Blake Ziti, Karsten Quint, Matt Carroll, Chase Kaufman, and Dakota Tabler bring us down to the end of the top 20. We're into the used car lot now for sure. Nicholas Goen, trouble in turn 1, Edward Vardanesian, and Don Hunter all ran into assorted amounts of trouble over the course of the race. But that's all of that. That's all the racing done, and it's time to talk to some very happy drivers, starting with our race winner, Mr. Daniel Harris. You came into this race, you were worried about some trouble at Long Beach. You were worried about maybe a full field pileup, thought maybe you'd be the one to do it, but that seemed like a pretty trouble-free day for you.
Yeah, first off, I want to say a big hello to Justin. Good to see you back commentating, dude. And a big thank you to Ali, who created the setup that I used pretty much last minute. And yeah, this race, I had not done an IMSA race all week. Essentially was just going in wanting to survive. Pole position, I would say, is a little bit controversial, as Pat did do that lap before I did. So I think had he started on pole, it would have been a completely different race. But the intention was just survive, and I managed to do that.
So looking at last season, I think we can both agree that it was kind of over before it started with some trouble in the opening races, but you come back to this season with a fresh slate. You've started the season with a win. Is this going to be the Daniel Harris Championship season?
Look, I'm a little superstitious. I always, when I race in the same clothes, same everything, down to the socks, down to the underwear. So I'm not going to say anything just yet. But it does look like the Acura is going to be very strong at a couple of other tracks, so it's going to be quite interesting.
Well, we did get to hear about Daniel Harris's underwear on RaceSpotTV, so that's a good compromise. Congrats on the win, Daniel. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, boys.
Daniel Harris coming home with the win, and how about another winner? It's Justin Prince with Mr. Jack Hedgecox.
Yes, indeed, and Jack, you had a lot to deal with in the early going. You're talking about GTP traffic. In turn, you end up getting the victory after, well, your namesake ended up losing the lead, trying to stretch it on gas. Talk us through the dramatic LMP2 battle for the win today.
Yeah, it was also just to say, glad to be back, guys. Nice to see y'all again after that break. Yeah, it was stressful at the start. I didn't expect to have GTP traffic for the first third of the race in front of me, to be honest. So it definitely made it stressful. Couldn't really pull away, and it really helped out those people that did the alternate strategy of fuel saving. It definitely made it very stressful, especially that going side by side into turn one with, I think it was ZD. I was really stressing that we were both about to die. I'm not gonna lie. So, but no, after pit stops, I saw that whole group of cars all pit. I had to cover them off, and then once I knew I came in front of them, it was just a matter of time of pulling away, thankfully. So, definitely a little bit anticlimactic at the end, but we like those. So.
Yeah, but what's about to say, mention the namesake part, because notice the go win on the banner, at least on the broadcast side, and, well, there was a chance that your fellow competitor Josh Gowen would potentially steal. What was kind of going through your mind seeing the stretch out, and then they missed the corner?
I know. I was gutted for him. He didn't know if he was going to make it, and we were all talking strategy, because I figured I wasn't stressing too much in terms of him beating me, but in terms of him staying in front of Chinsky and that whole group that also pitted with me, I knew it was going to be close for him if you did manage to save it. And I think it just, once he missed that corner, it kind of flustered it and really ruined that strategy for him. I think if he saved it, like, I think it was one more lap, he would have had it. It was very tragic, but I would say he drove a great race otherwise, besides the one mistake, but that's all it takes. But I just want to shout out the whole Gallon Racing crew. Both teams say we put in a lot of work and we're ready for the season.
So in turn, different schedule makeup compared to the early side of the card, of course, with Long Beach being first. But the next race is Watkins Glen with the boot. How do you feel about the Glen?
Well, I think I won that race last season, if I'm not mistaken, so I'm looking to repeat. So definitely put some time into it. I'm pretty decent at the track, so I think if I do some races this week, I'll have a really good chance of winning it and seeing y'all again.
Thank you very much for the time, Jack.
Thanks, appreciate it.
That Judge Cox coming away with the win in LP2, and as he said, it was a lot more stressful in the car than it looked on the outside, even though it looked stressful from the outside.
And it was pretty stressful for Pat Pelshaw as well, taking a chat with our second place finisher in GTP. Pat, welcome back to the series once again. How did you feel about some drama at Long Beach today?
Yeah, it was intense. Yeah, it was a good race though. I did not expect the car to feel so good around here, especially because of the airpin. Like, it was so bad I had to pull in the clutch when getting out because I was getting no power out of the car. But we got a breakthrough on the set yesterday, and it really clicked. Like, the car was on fire today.
So you're fighting with Daniel Harris for a championship again. He's got one on you with the first win of the season. How do you fight back in the next 8 rounds to beat him to the championship?
I think we got a good group of guys in PRE just working together, and we will work on the kart during the holidays and figuring out how to set it up properly. So I think we'll be able to mount a championship fight for a bunch of us, actually will. So I'm looking forward to it.
Well, Pat, congrats on second. With second and third, I think it'll be PRE in the team's championship lead, and we'll see all you guys next week.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Pat Pelshaw coming home second, and we've got one more driver to talk to. It's the Fuel Meister himself. He was able to pull it off. Jeremy Carter gets to talk to Justin.
Jeremy, what's your reaction to making it work on the nose stop?
Super happy. Yeah, been practice at the official all this week. Was just praying that everyone had me was going to pit. I was scared seeing the delta to Josh Gowen the whole race. I knew that he was saving, but he just got cut out by a few unlucky spins, and I was able to pull it. I'm super happy with the second there.
You talked about getting the practice in the official races. When it comes to the league scene itself, of course, you're throwing the fuel limitations for the car in this series. How much more difficult was it compared to the officials when you factor in there's less gas in the first place in this tank?
Yeah, the biggest problem for me was actually the lack of GT3s, because I'm just used to used to using them for draft as much as I can, lifting around them to minimize time lost and also fuels. So without them, it was just focus on driving, letting the P1s by as fast as I can, and just put in good laps.
So now, the expectations increase in turn. How do you plan to try and match this performance, if not surpass it, since there's one more spot to go from here when we go to Watkins Glen next week?
Looking forward to it. Watkins Glen was one of my best races last year. I think I brought in a solid 4th place, so I'm looking to go for the win.
Once again, congratulations on the podium today, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Jeremy Carter, using lessons learned from racing and officials to be able to get in second.
That's what you got to do. Practice always helps, and if you can get as many Long Beach laps as possible, I think you're going to have an advantage over the field. But Long Beach goes by the wayside for the rest of the season, and next week we go very far up north into New York to Watkins Glen. The Finger Lakes play host to round 2 of the season. It is the boot layout, controversial. Some people like it, some people don't. I think it's very good for racing, and we had a fantastic race at this exact layout last season. I'm excited. I hope you are too. Same time, same place here on RaceSpotTV, GTP LMP2 at Watkins Glen. And don't forget the LMP3-GT4 as well at Rudskogen. It is a prototype doubleheader on Monday nights, and as you saw tonight, it is always exciting, it is always action-packed, and we hope to see you next week. But for now, I've been Joey Tebbin, Justin Prince has been Justin Prince, Dustin Allis has been on production duty, and until we see you next time, so long.